more than 30 Straw Hat theories. If you want me to make this kind of video about another group or something else from One Piece, tell me in the comments. And as with all my long videos, I know many of you play them in the background while doing other things, and you know I love it when you tell me in the comments what you're up to. And for those of you who put it on to fall asleep, good night. Let's begin. I have spent over 100 hours analyzing each of the Straw Hats individually and have reached a conclusion about what each of their ultimate powers will be when the One Piece manga ends. And currently, as I'm recording this video, we are in the Elbaf arc. The Straw Hats are in the middle of the conflict of the Elbaf arc, and there is even talk of several power-ups for the end of this arc or even the next one, but I have gone further to the end of One Piece. Let's analyze each of the Straw Hats one by one, and let's start directly with Tony Chopper, the crew's doctor. We begin with Chopper, our adorable human reindeer and doctor, although a bit useless. Currently, Chopper has the ability of the Ito fruit, which is the devil fruit that makes you human, allowing him to change shape, especially thanks to his rumble ball, and he has developed various points, forms, however you want to call them, that grant him different attributes. He has the brain point for thinking, the heavy point for brute strength, the guard point for defense, and his most powerful form, the monster point, where he becomes a giant monster with enormous strength. Before, he used to lose control in Monster Point, but after the time skip, he managed to master it much better. Now he can even talk and reason in that form. In Wano, we already saw that Chopper greatly improved his Rumble Ball with the help of Caesar Clown to extend the duration of the Monster Point to 30 minutes, although at the cost of becoming exhausted and turning into a tiny elderly Chopper afterward. This monster point is so strong that it allowed him to withstand some blows from none other than Queen, one of Kaido's commanders, all during the Battle of Onigashima. I must say, that's not bad at all for Chopper, especially for being a doctor. How did Chopper get these powers? Well, his journey to become strong has been mainly through science with the Rumble Balls and medical training. He himself invented the Rumble Balls after joining the crew under the tutelage of Dr. Kureha to modify the limits of his fruit. During the time skip, he studied on Torino Island and perfected his forms, so now he can transform into almost all his points without using Rumble Ball, except for the Monster Point. His great achievement post-time skip was precisely mastering that Monster Point enough to use it deliberately and not just as a last resort. Now, in terms of Haki, Chopper has not yet shown any of the three variants, and this is understandable. Chopper is a reindeer who gained human intelligence with his fruit and has focused much more on medicine than on being a Haki warrior. However, many of us think it's time for him to get a Haki power-up. Learning even armament Haki would be a huge leap for him, as it could enhance his physical blows several times beyond what he is currently capable of achieving. Imagine Chopper hardening his enormous Monster Point fists with armament Haki. It would be terrifying for his enemies, but unfortunately the narrative reality is that Chopper is not a combat-oriented character. He is the group's doctor, and Oda usually keeps him in that support role, besides using him for comic relief and selling plush toys. And it wouldn't be surprising if we don't see significant power improvements in Chopper, perhaps even until, as I say, the very end of the story. Let's remember that even in his bounty, he's always treated more like a pet than a serious threat. 50 berries, then 100, now 1,000 berries. A joke that will probably continue. In other words, by the logic of the story, Oda might not give Chopper a massive power boost because his main role is to heal the crew and provide cuteness and humor. Is there anything else Chopper can evolve in? If we speculate a bit, yes. His Monster Point could already be considered an almost awakened form of his fruit, but it would be great if at the end of the series, Chopper achieves a true awakening, meaning he can enter Monster Point at will, without needing Rumble Balls and without side effects, that he is able to maintain that monstrous form for a prolonged time and control it completely. And that would be the ultimate power-up for him. Imagine Chopper fighting in his giant form alongside the others, but without limitations. He would be at the level of a giant in terms of physical presence. Another potential theoretical improvement would be that, in addition to armament Haki, he awakens observation Haki, especially to better detect the vitality of allies and enemies, something that, as a doctor, would make a lot of sense. In summary, Chopper probably won't become extremely powerful in combat, as we will see with the rest of the Straw Hats. and his most logical improvement would be to perfect what he already has, which would be the monster point and perhaps, at most, add a basic haki. At the end of the day, he will end up being, as always, the adorable reindeer doctor, only he would be able to give you a punch the size of a building if the situation calls for it. Now let's continue with Nami, navigator of the Straw Hats, known as the Cat Burglar. Nami was always considered part of the weak trio of the crew compared to the combat monsters, but things have changed quite a bit recently. Her most notable power-up so far has been becoming a companion of Zeus, a homie cloud from Big Mom's soul, who now lives inside her Klimatact. Thanks to Zeus, Nami gained a huge increase in offensive power. Now she can summon lightning and storms with much more strength than before, to the point of seriously electrocuting very strong enemies. For example, with Zeus's help, she managed to defeat Ulti, one of the Tobirapo, and she did this with a single thunderous electric attack. As for how she got Zeus, it was a matter of luck and cunning. During the Battle of Wano, Big Mom lost control over Zeus, and he ended up taking refuge in Nami's Klimatact. Nami, being clever, showed affection to Zeus and convinced him to stay with her. I would also be convinced to stay with her if she showed me a little affection, and if not too. Since then, Zeus is literally Nami's living weather weapon. Before Zeus, Nami had already been improving her weapon a lot. Let's remember the Klimatact created by Usopp in Alabasta, which was later improved in Scipioea, becoming the perfect Klimatact with dials, and later modified with the weather science that Nami learned in Weatheria during the prize. It even received another upgrade from Usopp later. All these versions allowed Nami to recreate weather effects, generate clouds, heat bubbles, gusts of wind, mirages with temperature changes, etc. Basically, Nami already does things typical of a weather fruit, but using tools. That's why many of us doubt that she will eat any devil fruit, and it's because, well, she doesn't need it. Her weapon achieves similar effects. Also, giving Nami a fruit would mean taking away her ability to swim. And being a navigator, that might be more of a problem than a benefit. In terms of haki, Nami has not shown to use it either. And let's be honest, it doesn't seem very likely that Nami will awaken Armament Haki or the King's Haki, as they don't fit her style. Could she learn Observation Haki? Maybe a little. As a navigator, Nami has a sixth sense for weather changes. It's not Haki per se, but it shows sensitivity to her surroundings. If she developed Observation Haki, it could help her dodge attacks or launch hers with greater accuracy at long range. It wouldn't be far-fetched. Usopp unlocked that Haki in Dressrosa, so Nami could follow that path. Still, it's not certain or vital for her. Now, how far could Nami go with new upgrades? The most interesting aspect points to her Klimatact. It is already very powerful with Zeus inhabiting it, but it could become even better. Let's think about the context of the previous arc. Egghead, Vegapunk, the greatest scientist in the world who was there and is currently in Elbaf through Lilith. These climatic inventions sound like something that might be in his area of expertise. What if Vegapunk/Lilith decides to upgrade Nami's Klimatact? The idea is not far-fetched. In fact, many fans, myself included, believe that Nami could leave Elbaf or the following arcs with a Klimatact that is technologically super enhanced. This is just a theory for now, obviously not confirmed in the manga, but it would be the perfect power-up for Nami, given that she excels at using those tools. Imagine Lilith incorporating special materials or adjustments that amplify Zeus's lightning or give access to much more extreme weather phenomena, portable tornadoes, sudden pressure changes, and with Lilith Vegapunk as an ally, the possibilities are enormous. As for the story's logic, Nami probably wouldn't seek to be a super fighter beyond what's necessary. Her main motivation has never been to be strong in a fight, but to fulfill her dreams, drawing that map of the world. She herself has always preferred to avoid having high bounties or attracting the attention of the world government, so even though she has become more capable in battle, and Zeus has indeed made her dangerous, Nami is not going to become part of the monster trio or anything like that. She will remain in a middle range where her intellect, cunning, and now her weather magic will allow her to defeat enemies when the conditions are right, but we won't see her, for example, exchanging punches with an admiral. In summary, her power ceiling is being an increasingly ingenious weather mage, but not becoming a brutally aggressive warrior, and that's fine, because Nami shines by using her head and the weather to her advantage. Now let's move on to Brook, the skeletal musician and swordsman of the crew, artistically known as Soul King. Brook is peculiar in himself. He died decades ago, but his Yomi Yomi no Mi, the Revive fruit, gave him a second life, bringing his soul back to the world of the living. Currently, Brook's greatest power comes precisely from this fruit and how he has developed it. What can Brook do? He can do everything a good swordsman and musician would do, but while being dead, and he is extremely agile and light, as he is basically just bones. He wields his sword skillfully and combines his music with combat. The most special aspect of his soul power is that Brook can separate his soul from his own body, projecting himself as a spirit to explore or also to attack. He has also shown a certain affinity with the spirit world and the cold of the afterlife. His sword attacks sometimes freeze the enemy as if bringing them from the cold of death. In fact, his sword is called Soul Solid and can produce ice. Brook was even able to face homies, objects with souls of Big Mom and Whole Cake, all thanks to his own soul being able to counter Big Mom's influence. As for Haki, Brook has not manifested any type yet, given that he is a comedic and secondary support character in fights. Oda has not had him use Haki so far, but he could learn it. Well, possibly yes. Brook could awaken Observation Haki in the future. This would be useful for better supporting his companions, detecting enemies not directly visible, which would be helpful when he projects his soul far away, for example. A Brook with Observation Haki could be a fantastic sentinel for the crew, detecting all hidden presences. An Armament Haki, well, it would also be useful for him to have it to fight certain Logias, or very resistant enemies. But if I had to bet, Observation fits a bit more with his support role and his personality, as he is funny and perceptive. Imagine him saying, I have Observation Haki, but I don't have eyes. Yo ho ho ho. Now let's talk about something very interesting, the possible awakening of Brook's fruit. His Yomi Yomi no Mi is unique. It already allowed him to return from death once and manage his soul in very creative ways. So what else can he do if he awakens it? Well, here we enter theoretical territory. Some fans speculate that if Brook awakens his fruit, he could influence other souls, not just his own. Does it sound a bit strange and a bit dark? Well, a little, but imagine if Brook could, for example, temporarily separate an enemy's soul from their body. It would be a devastating effect, basically knocking someone out by taking their soul, even if just for a moment. Another extreme possibility is that Brook could absorb or consume the souls of others to empower himself or even learn techniques from them. This last part is highly speculative and perhaps too dark for the tone of One Piece, but the idea arises from the fact that an awakening of a Paramecia usually extends the power to others or the environment. Brook, in theory, could project his life energy into the world around him. It has also been joked that if he gave another massive concert as Soul King, with that power he could give his entire audience an out-of-body experience, literally. And it sounds funny, but also a bit weird. Brook has already fulfilled a good part of his dream. He became famous again as a musician and hopes to reunite with Laboon. As for the fight, he has had his heroic moments, like stealing a Poneglyph right under Big Mom's nose or helping Robin against Black Maria. But he is not part of the core of the strongest fighters. It is unlikely that Oda will turn him into a fighting machine on the level of Zoro or Sanji, but such a groundbreaking awakening might not happen, but if it does, it will probably be used in a comedic or specific way. In summary, Brook's ceiling will probably be learning some Observation Haki, mainly to complement his kit and continue taking advantage of his undead nature in clever ways. His soul ability is already quite useful for espionage and mischief. Let's remember how in Whole Cake Island he went through closed doors and scared enemies by appearing as a ghost. And in combat, as long as he can freeze opponents and deliver good sword strikes, he will fulfill his role. Brook will continue to be that rock star invincible to the passage of time, literally because he is already dead. We now continue with Frankie, the super cyborg and right-hand man in the crew's engineering. Frankie is already quite strong as he is. During the Wano arc, we saw him defeat Sasaki on his own, one of the Tobi Rappo, who were part of the elite. He achieved this by combining the power of his mecha, Frankie Shogun, the giant robot he built, with his own modified body and arsenal of weapons. Currently, Frankie does not have any known fruit or Haki powers. His power lies in his technology and brute strength. After the time skip, Frankie rebuilt himself with resources from Vegapunk's old laboratory in Baldivia, equipping himself with things like the Radical Beam, a laser inspired by the pacifists, and many new weapons. His body runs on cola as fuel, which is peculiar but effective. Basically, Frankie is a walking arsenal. He has cannons, lasers, interchangeable arms, vehicles. How did Frankie get his upgrades? Well, unlike others, he builds them himself. Frankie has progressively modified himself from a common human who became a cyborg after the accident in Water 7, and then during the time skip he became even more mechanical, so much so that his face is now a metal plate, for example. He also designed and built the Thousand Sunny ship with wood from the legendary Atom Tree, showcasing his talent as an engineer carpenter. Every time Frankie finds new technology, he incorporates it. An example was that after reading Vegapunk's documents, he implemented the laser in his body, so we could say that Frankie's continuous power-up is his engineering, and he can always add more resistant materials or more powerful weapons to his body. But then, what could be next for Frankie? This is where the possibilities get a little exciting, and it's similar to Nami's case. Having left Egghead, but with Lilith as the Vegapunk in Elbaf, it's quite hopeful to think that Frankie could leave Elbaf with a significant upgrade. Lilith Vegapunk is literally the scientist whose inventions Frankie has revered for years, and it's the golden opportunity to learn new tricks, as he couldn't do this in Egghead due to the situation. So he could get, for example, new types of laser weaponry, upgrades to his suit, or even to the Sunny. There is a theory that perhaps Vegapunk could help him redesign his body, maybe making it a bit more efficient or compact without losing power. Can you imagine Frankie returning to a perhaps more human design, but with the same current strength thanks to Vegapunk's futuristic science? Let's see, it would be interesting, although there are many people who already like Frankie's current form, but seeing that they changed Robin's hairstyle to resemble the pre-time skip one, maybe it could be there. Another quite obvious area for improvement is the Haki. Frankie has not used Haki so far, but since he fights hand-to-hand, Armament Haki would be perfect for him. It would be great to see him harden his metal fists with Haki to enhance his punches like the strong right, or make his Frankie Shogun robot even more resistant. A cyborg covered in black Haki armor sounds great and would fit well with Frankie's tough style. The question is whether he will have the time or need to learn it in the middle of the final plot, and it could be that perhaps in the final war Frankie ends up using Haki in some way, but Frankie's narrative ace up his sleeve is Pluton. Let's remember that in Go Event, it was revealed that Frankie possessed the blueprints of the ancient weapon Pluton, a legendary warship. Frankie decided to burn these blueprints so they wouldn't fall into the wrong hands, but that connection with Pluton could tie him to future events. We know that the real Pluton is hidden in Wat, and many fans speculate that later on Frankie could build a new Pluton, but using the Thousand Sunny as a base. Or even discover Pluton himself and pilot it. What would this mean in terms of power? Having an ancient weapon under control is a game changer. Pluton is supposedly a battleship capable of devastating entire islands. If Frankie manages to command such a machine, the crew would gain a gigantic military advantage. Of course, this depends a bit on how Oda is going to handle the ancient weapons, but the possibility is there. In terms of power up, it's not that Frankie becomes physically stronger, but he would have the most powerful weapon of the seas at his disposal, greatly increasing not only the narrative danger, but also the influence, taking it to another level. Now regarding limits, perhaps a bit more terrestrial, a bit more logical. No. Frankie is a curious case because technically he doesn't have a clear ceiling other than what the available technology imposes. He can always find a harder alloy, a more powerful fuel, or a bigger weapon. However, within the story, Oda will probably keep him a step below the true monster fighters. Frankie usually tends to face opponents of a high intermediate level, like a Tobirapo, as we saw earlier, or a Vice Admiral, but I doubt we will see him defeat an Admiral, or of course a Yonkou one-on-one. For example, his role is to be the heavy fire support and construction, not the protagonist of the most epic battles. Additionally, Oda balances the crew quite well, as the monstrous trio Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji have more exaggerated powers, while Frankie compensates with ingenuity. In conclusion, Frankie's ceiling will be somewhat marked by his ability to invent. It is possible that we will see him with new equipment made by Vegapunk, perhaps using ultra-resistant materials or advanced science weapons. Maybe he will integrate new technology from the Seraphim, or perhaps he can incorporate a system based on the discoveries Vegapunk made in Egghead, an energy shield, anti-gravity boots, who knows? But well, if he learns Haki, it would be the icing on the cake to complement him. And in a distant horizon, if the Pluton plot is activated, then Frankie could become the man behind the greatest weapon in history, solidifying him as a legend among the engineers of the sea. Very, very cool for Frankie. I like it. We arrive at Usopp, the shooter and professional liar of the team, who is ironically called God Usopp since Dressrosa. Usopp is a special case because unlike many of his companions, his strength does not lie in brute force or supernatural powers, but in his ingenuity, marksmanship, and incredible luck. Currently, Usopp fights using his giant slingshot, the Kuro Kabuto, and a variety of pop greens, which are seeds of exotic plants he developed during his training on Boeing Island. These seeds, when thrown, quickly grow into plants with offensive or utilitarian effects. Vines that trap, exploding bamboos, giant flowers. Usopp also retains tricks like the smoke star, the spicy chili star, and other very creative ammunition. His aim is exceptional. Let's remember that he was able to shoot sugar in Dressrosa from hundreds of meters away and without a direct line of sight, something he managed to awaken at that moment thanks to observation haki, which ironically he hasn't used in a very notable way on screen after that miraculous shot. He perceived the aura of Luffy, Law, and Sugar, and with that, he was able to calculate his shot despite the obstacles. This was a great moment and an increase in his abilities. But how did Usopp get that power-up? Well, under extreme pressure, his friends were about to be turned into toys, and he overcame his cowardice for a second to save them, awakening the haki. It was more of a sudden burst than conscious mastery. Since then, Oda has kept Usopp in his typical scared personality, so we haven't seen him train or make much use of that haki. Usopp also improved somewhat in physical endurance during the time skip, but he still has a relatively normal build. Why doesn't Usopp become stronger quickly? Well, because of the narrative. Usopp is the normal man of the group in many ways. Fearful, sometimes weak-willed, very human. His dream is to become a brave warrior of the sea, which implies that he is not yet. If suddenly Usopp overcame all his fears and became completely brave and powerful, his character arc would be complete at that moment. Oda wants Usopp to remain the same, the clever coward, until the climactic moment of his development. That's why, no matter what he achieves, like in Dressrosa where he was a hero, he always shows fear again afterward. Keeping him at that earthly level makes his eventual moment of ultimate bravery much more emotional, so Oda deliberately doesn't give Usopp big power-ups in the traditional sense. We will not see Usopp suddenly with superhuman strength or devastating martial techniques because it would break the purpose of his own character. So what potential for evolution does Usopp have from here to the end? There are some interesting ideas, and curiously many come from the lies that Usopp has told. In One Piece, Usopp's lies sometimes come true in an ironic way. He said he saw a giant fish that his droppings were like islands, and then he saw it when leaving Little Garden. He said he encountered a village of dwarves and later found the Tontada. He said he fought with a giant mole and fought with Miss Merry Christmas in Alabasta, and like these, many more. But among his most recent lies are that he possesses Conqueror's Haki and that he will command an army of 8,000 people. It sounds very far-fetched, but what if it turns out to be true in the end? The idea of Usopp awakening the Conqueror's Haki is probably the most speculative of all, but there are those who support it. The Conqueror's Haki, let's remember, is that rare power that only those with overwhelming will have. Usopp, at first glance, doesn't fit. He trembles with fear constantly. How could someone so cowardly have the King's Haki? Well, those who support this theory point out that Usopp, deep down, has a very strong will when it matters. We saw him face Luffy himself in Water 7 for his own convictions, or risk his life in East Blue to save Robin. Additionally, his lie about having the Conqueror's Haki could be Oda playing with the idea that eventually, in a moment of great courage, Usopp might actually manifest it. It would be ironic and epic. The boy who always runs away ends up literally knocking out enemies with his spirit. This is perhaps more of a fan fantasy, but I can't help but mention it because it's part of the conversation that is most on the table about his potential. A more viable evolution is for Usopp to fully develop his observation haki. He has already taken the first step, so he could learn to use it at will. Let's imagine Usopp in Elbaf as he is currently. Here, he could further train his aim. Perhaps Shanks could return with Usopp's father, Usopp, who is one of the best snipers in the world, and maybe he could learn legendary shooting techniques and combine that with advanced observation haki. There might be a moment in the future to make the perfect shot. This does sound possible and useful, especially considering the final battle. And Usopp has to learn to take down crucial things with a single long-distance shot. Also, let's not forget the army of 8,000 men I mentioned. Currently, Usopp is quite popular. The dwarves of Dressrosa adore him like a god. He has giant friends. And it wouldn't be strange if by the end of Elbaf, Usopp wins over the giants with some feat or story and ends up leading a battalion of giant warriors in the final war. This would fulfill his lie about the 8,000, since one giant would be worth many men, meaning that perhaps with 800 giants, it would be like 8,000 men. And it would be a moment of redemption for him, standing in front of an imposing army, truly being the great sea warrior Usopp, the one he always wanted to be. In terms of power, commanding an army is more of a tactical achievement than a personal one, but it would undoubtedly make Usopp feared worldwide, as he himself fantasized. In short, Usopp is not going to have a sudden power-up, like now he will launch a Kamehameha. His improvements would be gradual and narrative in nature, perfecting his shot and his observation haki, perhaps obtaining better ammunition, and eventually demonstrating genuine bravery that impresses everyone. Perhaps the climax of his development is just a heroic act where he deceives the enemy or inspires his allies in a brilliant way. And who knows, at that point, at his peak, we might even see a hint of Conqueror's haki emanating from Usopp if it serves the story, as a metaphor that he has finally become that brave person he always wanted to be. But until he gets there, Usopp will stay true to his style, a coward with a lot of luck, creativity, and a very brave hidden heart that beats stronger when his friends need him. Let's continue with Nico Robin, the archaeologist of the crew, also called the Devil Child by the government. Robin is not known for overwhelming physical strength, but for the unique power of her fruit, Hahana, the flower fruit, which allows her to sprout parts of her body on any surface. Currently, Robin can literally create hundreds of limbs at a T-Oau, which she used impressively in Dressrosa, making a giant hand to hold Hakuba, and especially in Wano, where she obtained a long-awaited power-up, the Demonio Fluer. But what is the Demonio Fluer? It is a new technique or form that Robin revealed in her fight against Black Maria. It consists of Robin making a giant duplicate of herself bloom, but with a demonic appearance. Dark skin, horns, demon wings. She truly lived up to her nickname of the Demon Child in this form. Additionally, Robin greatly multiplies her size and strength and was able to defeat Black Maria with a devastating final blow, the giant hand Spang. This was her first major one-on-one victory since practically Skypiea many years ago, so we all celebrated it. But how did Robin get this power-up? It seems to be the result of her training during the time skip with the Revolutionary Army and her own ingenuity. Robin mentioned that Sabo and Koala taught her certain things. From Koala, she learned basic fishman karate, which is why she was able to use a water palm attack to extinguish the flames in Onigashima, and from Sabo, possibly, concepts of hand-to-hand combat. They also called her a demon, symbolically, which perhaps inspired the visual form of the Demonio Fluer. When Robin found herself cornered by Black Maria, she decided to play that hidden card we hadn't seen. It's likely she had already developed it off-screen and was just waiting for the right moment to use it. It is not a formal awakening of her fruit, but rather an evolution of her techniques, using the same power as always, but on a larger scale. Speaking of awakening, Robin's Hana-Hana fruit is already quite unusual. Normally, a Paramecia user can only affect their own body, but Robin can make her parts appear on other people and objects, also interacting with the environment at a distance. And this is something typically only seen in awakened fruits. That is why some say that Robin's power is almost awakened from the start, and that Oda designed her that way, and that we will not see an additional classic awakening. In other words, the Demonio Fluer could be the maximum her fruit reaches in terms of manifestations, without adding new abilities of magical origin. However, you never know. An awakening of the Hana-Hana no Mi, if it existed, might allow Robin to create complete clones of herself, instead of just a giant half-body, or make parts sprout from other people. Can you imagine making arms sprout from the enemy's own body to immobilize them? Very crazy, but interesting. Where Robin clearly has room for improvement is in Haki. Robin has not used Haki so far in the story. However, as the enemies become stronger, many with Haki or Logia fruits, not very powerful Paramecias, she could greatly benefit from learning even Armament Haki. Let's imagine that Robin could cover those hundreds of arms she can sprout with Armament Haki. Her traditional clutch techniques, the bone-breaking ones, would be devastating, even against very resistant opponents, because the hardened arms would have much more strength and could even harm Logia users. Picture the scene. Robin smiling as a swarm of black hands appears, slapping some unfortunate soul. It would be very epic. For us, for him, it would be terrifying. Moreover, Robin's fighting style, which does not require brute strength but strategic placement of her limbs, would be perfectly complemented by Haki. In my opinion, it is almost certain that Robin will learn at least a bit of Haki before the end, maybe during the Elba arc itself, and even observation Haki would also be useful to anticipate attacks when she multiplies. But if I have to choose, armament Haki would give her more offensive advantage. But how strong could Robin become? Since she is not one of the main fighters, don't expect her to reach Yonkou commander levels or anything like that. Her importance lies in knowledge, in reading the poneglyphs, but Oda has already shown us that he wants her to be able to defend herself. The Demon Fleur was that step, so Robin's ceiling in terms of power could be a Robin with the Demon Fleur plus armament Haki. With this, she could face mid-high level enemies with some confidence. I don't imagine her, for example, defeating an Admiral one-on-one, but she could handle opponents of the caliber of the Tobirapo type or lower commanders. Narratively, moreover, Robin will always have others protecting her from great dangers. Being the only one who can decipher the path to Laugh Tale, she is a priority target. For that reason, it makes sense for her to increase her strength a bit so as not to be completely a damsel in distress. In conclusion, Robin already made a necessary leap in Wano by showing us what she is capable of. Her greatest improvement would probably be mastering Haki, especially armament Haki, to enhance her existing techniques. I wouldn't expect another mode, another transformation beyond the Demon Fleur. Maybe she will perfect it by making it last longer or move freely. Perhaps we will see variants like a complete Demon Fleur, a giant full body one using its demonic wings to glide in the air, or things like that. And those would be logical evolutions of what she has already shown. But beyond that, his role in the story does not require him to be a beast in fighting, only to be able to survive and fulfill his mission of reading the poneglyphs. And with the Demon Fleur and a possible Haki, he could surely do it, even if he faces some CP0 agent or another bounty hunter along the way. Now it's Jinbei's turn, the helmsman and former pirate captain who officially joined after Whole Cake and during the Wano arc. An interesting character because, unlike many of the previous ones, he started in the crew already being very powerful. Jinbei was in the elite of the pirates from before. He has impressive strength and technique in hand-to-hand combat, especially his fishman style, with which he can manipulate water, even the water in the opponent's body, mainly to launch long-distance attacks. He also masters fishman jujutsu, which is more useful underwater. And indeed, Jinbei is virtually invincible in the water, being a fishman. Add to that all his experience. He fought side by side with Ace for days, faced admirals, blocked attacks from Akainu and Aokiji in Marineford to protect Luffy, and more recently, defeated Who's Who with relative ease. Jinbei possesses armament Haki, as we saw him harden to block attacks. For example, he successfully stopped an attack from Big Mom and Whole Cake alongside Robin and the others. He should also have observation Haki, although there hasn't been an obvious scene, but like every veteran warrior, it is almost certain that he possesses it to a basic degree. What he hasn't shown is Conqueror's Haki, at least not until now. Let's talk about the possible improvements for Jinbei. Honestly, Jinbei doesn't need a clear power-up right now. What he needs are opportunities to shine. In Onigashima, he had his duel with Who's Who and dispatched him, showing a good combo of karate and strong punches. But being new to the crew, we haven't seen all his potential yet. Is there something Jinbei could develop further? Maybe Conqueror's Haki? It is not certain that he has it, but there are details that make us think he might have it. First, Jinbei has a strong will and is a natural leader, as he was the captain of the Sun Pirates, and we even saw him exercise some leadership in the Marineford War. When Big Mom tried to intimidate him by taking his life, that soul roulette, Jinbei stood firm without fear, demonstrating an indomitable spirit. That scene practically screamed Conqueror's Haki, at least in terms of attitude. Although there wasn't an actual burst of Haki, it wouldn't be surprising if Jinbei turned out to be a Conqueror's Haki user, and Oda reveals it in a future crucial battle. If so, Jinbei would join Luffy's club within the crew in having that rarity. It would be a narrative power-up, as it would confirm that Jinbei is of that legendary character mold, but in practice, it wouldn't drastically change how he fights unless he learns to infuse that Haki into attacks, something reserved for very few. Another possible, but likely power-up is a Devil Fruit. However, this is almost dismissible. Fishmen rarely eat fruits, as they would lose their greatest natural advantage, which is being able to swim freely. Jinbei especially loves the sea, and his style depends on being in contact with water, so I don't see him sacrificing that for a fruit power. He is already very strong without needing any magical extra. So what is Jinbei's ceiling? I would say that Jinbei is already at his ceiling or close to it. He is currently a combatant at the level of a Yonkou commander, perhaps comparable in strength to a Jack, or even to Queen in certain scenarios. By the end of the series, Jinbei probably won't increase his brute strength much more. Rather, we will see him go all out against very high level opponents. Consider that in the final saga, Jinbei could face an admiral or some big shot from the Navy or the government. There he would unleash all his karate, his armament haki to the fullest, which he already has, but we haven't seen it at its limit, and perhaps, as we've mentioned, if he comes to possess Conqueror's haki, he might use it to dominate lesser soldiers on the battlefield. Narratively, Jinbei is older and wiser. His role is often to advise Luffy or calm things down. He is not a character on an upward trajectory like the younger ones, but one already established. That's why I don't expect huge surprises in terms of new power for him, but rather the satisfaction of seeing him fight without reservations with what he already has. Even so, if Oda wanted to give him a little boost, he could give us that confirmation of Conqueror's haki in him, which would fit well with his nickname of Knight of the Sea, an imposing knight worthy of kings. It's also possible that we might see some supreme technique of Fishman karate that Jinbei hasn't used yet. In summary, Jinbei is already a tank within the crew. His evolution would be more demonstrative than transformative. We will see him stand alongside the greats without the need for crazy transformations, and if some new haki is confirmed in him, that would be great, but he doesn't need it to be relevant. Jinbei is proof that a character already introduced in their maturity can contribute to the final story by providing experience, absolute loyalty to Luffy, and reliable strength when needed. So while Jinbei doesn't have a very obvious power-up pending, like Nami or Frankie did, let's not underestimate him, because in the end, when we see the Knight of the Sea fighting seriously, we'll understand why even Ace and other characters respected him so much. Now we move on to the third monster of the crew, Sanji, our cook with a seductive humor and fiery kicks. Sanji has always been part of the main trio of fighters alongside Luffy and Zoro, and in Wano he reached new levels of power thanks to certain family revelations or his current situation. Sanji uses the blackleg combat style, meaning kicks and foot techniques without using his hands, because they are for cooking of course. He was already capable of incredible feats, like splitting rock with spinning kicks. But his signature move since Enies Lobby is the Diablo Jambe. Sanji spins at high speed to ignite his leg with fire, significantly increasing the power of his kicks. Before Wano, the Diablo Jambe was his peak, allowing him, for example, to damage the Pacifista after the time skip and hit other characters like Oven. Now in Wano, Sanji experienced an awakening of his genetic modifications. What does this mean? Well, it turned out that Sanji, being the son of Judge Vinsmoke, had mad scientist alterations in his DNA that were supposed to give him an exoskeleton and super strength like his brothers, but they never manifested in his childhood thanks to his mother Sora, who humanized him. By using the Germa raid suit several times that he was given in Whole Cake, something in his body awakened those latent genes. Suddenly, Sanji discovered that his durability and physical strength skyrocketed. His body gained a kind of invisible exoskeleton that makes him much more resistant, so much so that in Wano, Queen broke a sword on his neck while trying to cut him. All this without Sanji suffering any damage. He can also regenerate much faster from injuries, and his speed increased. Initially, Sanji was distressed because he feared losing his humanity or emotions, like his brothers, but in the end, he kept his heart and took advantage of the enhancements. With that new durability and strength, Sanji took his Diablo Jam to the next level, Air Dried Jam. This is an enhanced version where the fire on his leg turns blue, indicating an even higher temperature, and he explained that with his mutated blood pumping more powerfully, and perhaps combining the technology of the suit invisibly, he can generate much hotter flames. With the air-dried jam, Sanji literally steamrolled Queen at the climax of their fight, breaking several of his bones with lightning-fast combos. Queen, who had a bounty of 1,320,000,000 and lots of tricks, was decisively defeated. So Sanji is above the level of a typical commander of a Yonkou, at least from the past saga. He is already compared to characters like Marco Katakuri, which is plausible. How did Sanji get that power up? Well, it was a mix of inheritance and circumstances. His 2-year training in the Kamabakura Kingdom made him much stronger, and he gained the recipes for the culinary attack, etc. Although that might be more support, but the big leap came from his Vinsmoke blood. Unintentionally, the raid suit catalyzed his genetic transformation. Sanji decided not to use the suit anymore and broke it after feeling he was becoming a monster, but he kept the physical advantages of it forever. In other words, he became a superhuman, like in Dragon Ball in a way. Tough skin, strong bones, acceleration, and so on. Then, with his usual combat ingenuity, he created the eye-free jump in the middle of the fight, using the new strength to take his classic technique to the maximum. It wasn't so much about prior training, but an emergent in battle backed by his scientific background. But what could improve Sanji even more towards the end? Well, one thing is to completely master his genetic modifications. Now that he knows he has them, even if he disowns his family, he could investigate how they work. Perhaps he can discover new applications. For example, his brothers had specific abilities. One is electric, another uses poison, and he did not show an extra elemental ability. Beyond the fire, he generates himself with friction, and now with his internal power. Maybe his Vinsmoke power is precisely the generation of heat or internal fire, enhanced by emotion. Remember the Hell Memories attack on Layla Gyojin, where he burned in flames from complete rage. He could develop a more powerful version of the I Free Jump, maybe white or black flames, just to say something, multiplying the damage. But since the I Free Jump already surpassed the Devil Jump, it's natural to think that in the final battle, Sanji will have a moment where he pushes his legs to the limit. In terms of Haki, Sanji does possess advanced observation Haki in the sense of being very perceptive. He was able to dodge Katakuri's attacks instinctively to protect someone, and has demonstrated detecting presences as in Punk Hazard. His armament Haki is also assumed to be present, although Oda curiously never drew his leg turning black. We all assume that when hitting tough enemies, Sanji uses basic armament. It may be that Oda hasn't emphasized it much for aesthetic reasons, as the literal black leg wouldn't be very noticeable. Perhaps in future confrontations, we will see Sanji use armament Haki explicitly to, let's say, not break his leg against a Logia, so a possible minor power-up is to confirm and strengthen his armament Haki. He might even reach an advanced level of armament to burn from the inside, combining it with his fiery kicks. That would be terrible for whoever receives it. And Conqueror's Haki. Well, unlike Zoro, Sanji has not shown signs of possessing it. Some fans argue that all members of the monster trio should have it, but honestly, the story does not suggest it for Sanji. He has a lot of determination, yes, but his ambition is different. He wants to find the All Blue and protect his friends, not be the most dominant in something. I would bet that Sanji will not have Conqueror's Haki, and if he does have it, well, it would be a big surprise. I do not consider it necessary for his character or growth. A very interesting narrative aspect of Sanji and the Germa is that, although he broke ties with his family, there are possibilities that in the final war, Sanji might end up leading the forces of the Germa Devil Six in some way. He is the legitimate Prince of Germa, although he renounced it, but his brothers owe him favors since Whole Cake, and Judge surely noticed Sanji's feats. A temporary alliance could occur. Imagine Sanji, who guided the Germa, now leading his army, his clone soldiers, to fight against the world government, because it would benefit both. It would be an ironic but epic development, fulfilling a blood destiny without Sanji betraying his character. He would use that military power for a good cause, not for conquest. However, this is more an argument for personal improvement than for power. In conclusion, Sanji already had his great evolutionary leap in Wano with the I Free Jump and the exoskeleton. His final ceiling could be to fully exploit that combo of genetics plus fire to create even more destructive attacks. He could also establish himself as an inspiring leader in battle, commanding, for example, as I say, the Germa warriors or the Sunny's allies in the final battle, which fits with his role as a renegade prince. But in terms of limitations, Sanji will probably not surpass Zoro and much less Luffy. Oda is very careful about the balance between them. Sanji will continue to be amazing, but Zoro and Luffy are ahead in raw power. That said, Sanji will have his own niche, overwhelming speed, refined technique, and many other things. At the end of the series, I imagine him as the fastest man in the East Blue, so to speak, capable of setting the air on fire with his kicks and taking down high-caliber opponents. Perhaps he will face a Marine Admiral in the final war. That would be a definitive test of his power. And let's not forget his other power, which isn't for fighting, but is important: cooking. Sanji can boost his friends with his banquets. It started with the dishes that restored Luffy's energy. It's not far-fetched that at a critical moment, Sanji's culinary skill could make the difference. For example, preparing something to counteract a poison, or giving Luffy and Zoro an extra energy boost during a meal. It's a rather different ace up the sleeve, but relevant to his role. In summary, Sanji is already quite powerful after Wano, and any future power increase will be more about perfecting what he has obtained than something entirely new. We will see him better understanding his limits and maybe using more creative techniques with what he already has. Ifrit will be his signature from now on, and he might take it to another level in the great final battle. In the meantime, he will continue to be the gallant knight who delivers fiery kicks to anyone who threatens his captain, or worse, a lady in danger. We arrive at Zoro, the number 2 swordsman of the crew and the future best swordsman in the world. Zoro has had quite straightforward progress throughout the series. He keeps taking more powerful swords, cutting tougher enemies, and mastering new sword and Haki techniques. Currently, after the events of Wano, he had the sword Enma, one of the 21 Wazamono, the top grade swords. Enma is special because it draws out the Haki of its users, extracting it in large quantities. With that sword, Zoro managed to do something impressive. He awakened his advanced Conqueror's Haki and imbued it into the swords during the fight with King. That is to say, Zoro can now perform cuts imbued not only with armament Haki, but also with the aura of the Conqueror, which greatly amplifies his cutting power. Let's remember that with a brief moment of that, he managed to injure Kaido on the rooftop. This was his great power-up in Wano, confirming that he possesses Conqueror's Haki and learning to use it in hand-to-hand combat. Let's recap his current powers. Zoro wields 3 swords, the Santoryu technique, and has several signature techniques, from the classic onigiri to the most recent technique with which he cut King. His current swords are the Wadai Shimoni, the white sword inherited from his childhood friend Kuina, who is currently Zunesha. The Sandai Kitetsu, the cursed sword of lower grade that he used in Logue Town. The Enma, the other Wazamono that replaced Shusui. Zoro can also use his 9-sword technique, the Ashura, which seems like a spiritual manifestation of his combative aura. He looks like a demon with 3 heads and 6 arms with 9 swords. He first demonstrated that technique in Eni's lobby, and used it again against Kaido, where it was hinted that it was linked to his Conqueror's Haki, as Kaido perceived it and said, "Do you have Conqueror's Haki?" As for Haki, Zoro has armament Haki at a very high level, as he was able to cut through the extremely tough body of Kaido using the secret technique of Ryo, which he learned by observing Higoro and the samurai. His observation Haki is quite average. Zoro has never been especially skilled at dodging like Sanji, although he has pretty good reflexes. Interestingly, Zoro has rare cases of perception, like sensing the breath of things to cut steel against Mr. One. But formally, observation is the area of Haki where he could improve the most, because he hasn't shown anything like being able to see into the future or at a large range. Now we know what he has, and he has used it offensively. With that, Zoro entered the league of the top characters. But what does Zoro need to reach his goal of being the best swordsman? Mainly 2 things: forging his black swords and acquiring a supreme grade sword. In the world of One Piece, we only know of a few permanent black swords. The most famous is Yoru, Mihawk's sword, which is a Sajo Wazamono. And the other is Shusui, which was originally the sword of the samurai Ryuma. These swords turned black from the continuous use of so much Haki. Ihawk explained to Zoro that forging a black sword involves imbuing it with Haki so many times and so intensely that it changes color permanently. Zoro has not managed to do that with any of his, so it is expected that Zoro will turn at least 1, if not all of his swords into black blades before the end, as to surpass Mihawk he will have to match him in that achievement. And I would bet that the first will be the Wado Ichimonji, the sword with which he has the most emotional connection. That sword contains Kuina's will, and it is the only one that has been with him from the beginning. Turning the Wado Ichimonji black would be like immortalizing that will. He could also do it with the Enma, since the Enma is a sword hungry for Haki, practically made to be a black sword someday. Another option would be to obtain a supreme grade sword, a Sayo Wasamono. Currently none of the 3 are. The Wado and the Enma are of a great grade, 1 level below the supreme. The Sandai Kitetsu is of a much lower grade. To be the best swordsman, it would be appropriate for Zoro to wield at least 1 supreme sword. Since Mihawk has 1, Roger had 1, even Shanks has 1, and Whitebeard also had 1. So where would Zoro get such a weapon from? One possibility is that the Enma becomes black. Another is that he replaces the Sandai Kitetsu with its older sister. We know that the higher ranked Kitetsu, the Shodai Kitetsu, is one of the 12 known supreme swords. Many people theorize that the bald Gorosei, Inuzo Juro, possesses the Shodai Kitetsu sword because the design of his sword matches identically with the Kitetsu. If that were true, eventually that sword could come into play, and it wouldn't be far-fetched for Zoro to end up measuring his sword against that character's. Another option would be that in Wano he had the Niigata, but Zoro never got to use it, it remained stored. It could be that in the future Zoro obtains the Niigata or the Shodai. In any case, if I see Zoro wielding a higher grade Kitetsu to complete his final trio, it would be poetic. He has carried the youngest one for a long time, and might replace it with its ancestor in the final stretch, thus taking on the ultimate curse of that line of katanas. Another possible area of growth is observation Haki. As I mentioned, Zoro is mainly about armament and now Conqueror. His observation is standard. Does Zoro need advanced observation Haki to see the future? Maybe not to be the best swordsman, but it could help him against certain rivals. For example, if he faces someone super fast or who uses tricks, imagine against a Shiryu of the Rain who can become invisible with the Shusuke no Mi, Zoro would have to sharpen his senses to not be caught off guard. A Zoro who can sense an invisible or hidden enemy thanks to observation Haki would be covering that weakness. So I don't rule out that Zoro might train a bit more in that aspect, or that in the final battle under stress he might also awaken some extra level of observation. Let's remember that in the battle against Mr. One, he was attacked from blind angles, and Zoro managed to react by hearing the breath of the steel, which is like a very primitive form of observation Haki. I don't expect Zoro to have a level of Haki like Katakuri's, but he could have his combat instinct more refined, and this would complete his package. But how overpowered could Zoro end up being? Well, if all the above is fulfilled, he would have 3 black swords, 1 of supreme grade, mastered Conqueror's Haki, maximum armament, and decent observation. Frankly, he would be at the level of legends like Rayleigh, and that is the goal. Zoro will surely end the series as the strongest swordsman in the world, possibly having defeated Mihawk in a duel, or symbolically surpassed him in some way, and perhaps having accomplished some memorable feat like cutting something impossible. Already in the final war, let's see Zoro make a cut that goes down in history like Mihawk cutting that iceberg in Marineford, but much more impressive. As for narrative limitations, Zoro has always been presented as the second in command, the right-hand man of the Pirate King. His power should not overshadow Luffy's, but it must be overwhelming enough so that no one doubts he is the ideal first mate. Oda already achieves this. In the Wano arc, Zoro shown almost as much as Luffy in defeated King. I doubt he will have another saga where he stands out as much, but in the final battle, there might be a key moment. Zoro against Mihawk 2, a Zoro against Shiryu, a Zoro measuring the sword against Sumgur. In any of these scenarios, Zoro will probably demonstrate the fruit of his final training. That is, he will reveal his first sword turned black or unleash a new, more powerful Ashura technique. There have also been theories about his closed left eye, which might hide some secret, but it could just be a scar without much significance. I won't delve into that because it's too uncertain. If it turns out there's something with his eye, like a hidden power, it would be a very unexpected twist, but it is most likely just a training wound with Mihawk and a symbol of his sacrifice. In summary, Zoro is already at the peak of his journey. He just needs to add the finishing touches, forge the swords with Haki at the maximum level, possibly change a Supreme Sword, refine his observation Haki if the story requires it. With this, there will be no rival with a sword or without one who can match him. His name will be feared across all the seas as the new Hawkeye. Zoro's path is very straightforward, but that doesn't make it any less exciting because each step involves colossal challenges. The final step could even be defeating Draculae Mihawk, the current #1 in dueling, which will surely be legendary. And when Zoro achieves that, he will have fulfilled his promise to Kina and Luffy to never lose again until he becomes the best swordsman. There is no narrative limiter preventing Zoro from reaching that point. On the contrary, his growth is practically a fact established by the dream he pursues. So get ready to see Zoro perform feats much more absurd than what we have seen so far from now until the end of One Piece. Finally, we close with Captain Monkey D. Luffy and future King of the Pirates. Luffy is undoubtedly the character whose power has grown exponentially in the latest arc, to the point where many will say he is already broken or too strong, and it's that Luffy already reached his known power peak in Wano and perfected it in Egghead by awakening the new nature of his devil fruit and mastering all types of advanced Haki. Let's briefly review his current state. Although most already know it, Luffy ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi as a child, which we thought was a rubber Paramechia, but it turned out to actually be the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika, the sun god Nika, and this fruit would grant him a rubber body with cartoon-like properties, especially after awakening. Luffy developed throughout his series his second gear, third gear, fourth gear techniques, each to overcome recent challenges, but the big leap came in Wano, where on the brink of defeat with Kaido, he awakened the fifth gear, his Nika form, where he fully unleashes the imaginative power of that fruit. In Gear 5, Luffy becomes literally free in fighting style. He can do any cartoon-like craziness he imagines, inflate his body to gigantic sizes, turn the ground into rubber, punch the air, transform into absurd figures, like when he pulled out a baseball bat or put on sunglasses. It is a very unpredictable and extremely effective power because it does not follow normal rules of physics. With this form, Luffy defeated Kaido, who was called the strongest creature in the world. And let's not forget that before Gear 5, he had already mastered the 3 forms of Haki at high levels. Observation Haki at an advanced level, which allowed him to see the future in the fight against Katakuri. Armament Haki at an advanced level, where he learned Ryu and Wano, being able to destroy from within. Advanced Conqueror's Haki, which he also used against Kaido. Luffy literally checked all the power-up boxes he could. Result? As of today, Luffy is a recognized emperor, a Yonkou, and has a bounty of 3 billion, standing among the strongest characters in the world. But what more can be expected from Luffy in terms of power? Well, here's the curious part. Possibly very little. Regarding new abilities, Luffy stated that in his very Gear 5, it's like the peak, the freest and most powerful form he desired. The idea of a 6th gear has been speculated by many fans, but there are many people who say this doesn't make sense and that it's most likely not going to happen. Instead, they say Luffy's progression would be to master what has already been awakened. For example, perfecting that 5th gear they used against Kaido, and there we saw him have certain issues as he ran out of energy quickly. He aged a little for a few seconds by pushing the limits with the whole time thing, and it's speculated that over time, Luffy will learn to use his Nika form much more efficiently without losing so much stamina. Perhaps he will develop new moves within the 5th gear, new ways to attack, because with his cartoon body, literally the limit is imagination, and we already saw him make a giant fist the size of an island against Kaido. He could invent, I don't know, a mode where he permanently turns the entire environment into rubber or even faster attacks, but I insist, these are variations within his current power. Regarding Haki, Luffy already possesses the top level. At most, he will continue refining it. He could improve his future sight to the level of Katakuri or more, his future sight to the level of Shanks or more. His Conqueror's Haki might reach the finesse of Shanks as well, who has a Conqueror's Haki so powerful that it can intimidate an admiral without even touching. Learning that kind of control, but essentially there is no new Haki to discover or anything. It's about strengthening what he has already achieved. The story places Luffy in a curious position. He is already one of the strongest, but he still has formidable enemies to defeat, mainly Blackbeard and Admiral Akainu. Additionally, there is talk of the enigmatic possible final villain, Emu, from the world government. How will Luffy fight if he is already at his peak? Well, the answer would lie more in strategy, the conditions of the fight, and the inherent willpower factor. Luffy is the heir to the will of D, and his Nika fruit has a mythical liberator component. It is possible that at the climax, Luffy will reach an even higher spiritual mental state. No tangible power-up as such, but a conviction so absolute that his Conqueror's Haki becomes unstoppable. For example, if he faces Emu, who might have some divine power or an ancient weapon, Luffy would need all his creativity and determination to overcome. What if it is said that Luffy will not keep breaking the power meter with something new? Well, they say the plot no longer requires it. At this point, the audience knows that Luffy is capable of facing anyone. If Oda introduced a Gear 6 or an extra transformation, it might feel repetitive and unjustified. Also, Luffy says that his Nika is his peak, so we'll trust that this peak is enough. The only thing that could be interesting is to see Luffy use the 5th gear creatively in different situations. For example, using his Toon Force fighting style to counter Blackbeard's unusual powers, who has the Darkness and Earthquake fruit, a devastating combination. Or let's imagine Luffy fighting against Akainu. The magma is deadly, but maybe with the 5th gear, Luffy does something crazy like turning Akainu's magma into rubber for an instant. If his power can affect elemental abilities, which we still don't know, it's theoretical territory. And another issue mentioned is that now Luffy is a mythical Zoan, which usually comes with the fruit's own will. In his case, the spirit of Nika, the god of freedom, seems to resonate with him, but there could be more mysteries about that fruit that Luffy unravels some special ability linked to bringing the Dance of Liberation, or something like that, which Luffy could reproduce. This is more about narrative and mysticism than a power-up for fighting, but it could manifest as a super symbolic final technique that defeats the final antagonist. In terms of story logic, Luffy is destined to surpass all his predecessors, including Roger. In the end, Luffy will be the strongest and freest man in the world, the king of the pirates. He is on that path. There will be no one above Luffy in the end, not even Blackbeard or Im, as they will be defeated. In fact, it is expected that Luffy will do what Roger could not, probably overthrow the oppressive world government by igniting the dawn of freedom. His fruit is literally the embodiment of freedom through laughter and imagination. So more than these new power-ups, we will see Luffy using his current abilities in ingenious ways to fulfill that liberating role. For example, a powerful image would be Luffy using his giant elastic body to protect his allies from a catastrophic attack, or him laughing in the middle of the final battle, inspiring everyone. On a pure combat level, we definitely expect Luffy to face Blackbeard, a complicated rival because the Yami Yami nullifies fruits and also has the power of the earthquake, but perhaps with this 5th gear and superior Haki, this can be countered, and obviously it is expected that he will defeat Akainu, settling scores for what happened to Ace. These victories would not require a new gear, but probably a combination of everything he has learned, Conqueror's Haki, and Nika's creativity. Kamushi is a fighter. He might be the exception where Luffy has to surpass his limits once more, but they say they don't believe it will translate into a 6th gear. Rather, it would be Luffy pushing himself to the ultimate extreme of the 5th gear, perhaps risking his life in the process. In conclusion, Luffy has already reached the peak of the mountain in terms of tangible power-ups. His task right now is to reign over that peak. This means improving his level of control over Gear 5, so he can fight longer without getting exhausted and continue strengthening his Haki to legendary levels. That his Conqueror's Haki is so powerful that no one with a weak will can even get close, for example. We won't see a new crazy transformation, but what he already has is so versatile that it can still surprise us a lot. Luffy has basically become a cartoon character fighting in a relatively serious world, and that opens up a range of unpredictable comedic and epic moments. And the best part is that even though he's overpowered, Luffy is still very vulnerable if he's careless. His 5th gear has the drawback of energy consumption, so all the final battles will still have tension, because no matter how strong he is, there are opponents like Teach who could have tricks up their sleeve that could put him in trouble. But let's be realistic, Luffy will end up being the strongest character in One Piece, period. He will surpass even the legendary Roger in feats, because he will achieve what Roger did not. By then, his bounty will surely reflect that greatness. We can imagine that it slightly exceeds Roger's, perhaps around 5,600,000,000 berries, nodding to Gomu, which is 5 and 6 in Japanese. Although the figure is the least important, it is symbolic to think that Luffy will be recognized worldwide not only as the king of the pirates, but as the man who defeated the most fearsome enemies of the era. At this point, there would be no power-up to seek. His true strength would lie in the alliance of his power with his friends and his unbreakable inherited will. Each Straw Hat has their own path of growth, defined both by their ambitions and the narrative of One Piece. Some, like Luffy or Zoro, have already reached or are very close to reaching their maximum potential and only need to refine details. Others, like Nami and Usopp, might still gain 1 or 2 more tricks up their sleeve, but without stepping out of their role of intellect and support. Characters like Sanji, Frankie, or Robin, who received recent upgrades, would consolidate those advancements, perhaps with something extra, technological in Frankie's case, hockey in Robin and Sanji's case, and for their part, they might not change radically from that end, but that does not diminish their value and what they contribute to the team. The important thing is for Oda to maintain the balance. Not everyone needs to be at the level of gods, but they should be competent enough for the Straw Hat crew to face any challenge. At the end of the story, we will see the Straw Hats become a legendary crew with the Pirate King Luffy at the helm, backed by the strongest swordsman, Zoro, the deadly fire cook Sanji, a great fishman helmsman, Jinbei, a navigator who controls the weather, Nami, a sniper who inspires courage in an army, Usopp, a demonic archaeologist expert in world history, Robin, a cyborg with state-of-the-art weaponry, Frankie, a musician from the beyond, Brook, and an adorable monster doctor, Chopper. Each one in their ultimate role, with none more or less. They will go as far as their dream and the logic of the story allow them to go. Honestly, it's going to be very epic to watch. And that's the end of the video on how strong the Straw Hats will be at the end of One Piece. 1. The lies that became truth, and Usopp's possible death. One of the oldest and most popular theories in the One Piece fandom is the idea that Usopp might actually die by the end of the story. And not just any death, but one that mirrors something he said countless times, that he wants to die as a brave warrior of the sea. Now, that may sound simple on the surface, but when you dig into the pattern Oda has built around Usopp, it gets a lot deeper. Usopp has this running gag in the series. He lies. A lot. From the very beginning, he's been telling outrageous stories, like having fought a giant goldfish whose poop is the size of an island, or battling massive moles. The wild part? Almost every one of these lies has come true in some form. That mole fight happened in Alabasta with Miss Merry Christmas. The tribe of tiny people, the Tontada in Dressrosa. That goldfish, after Little Garden, we got that too. At first glance, it might just seem like a funny gimmick, Oda giving Usopp this Pinocchio-turned-prophet vibe, but the consistency is so on point that it feels more like a narrative device than a coincidence. And that brings us back to the line, "I want to die as a brave warrior of the sea." He says it more than once. It's not just a wish, it's practically a declaration. And if his other lies are turning into truths, then what about this one? This theory really gains weight when you think about how much Oda loves foreshadowing. He set up big plot points years in advance. The idea that he planted Usopp's future death back in East Blue isn't far-fetched at all. In fact, if you assume Oda had the broad strokes of the ending in mind, even when One Piece was supposed to be a 5-year series, LOL, then Usopp's final fate could have been planned since day one. Usopp dying doesn't just fit with his personal narrative, it would also complete his arc perfectly. He started off as a coward, a liar, a kid playing pirate, but over the years, he's grown. He still lies, but he's also fought against giants, taken down strong enemies, and even awakened observation haki. He's earned respect. He's becoming the brave warrior he always dreamed of. So what better end than going out in a blaze of glory, protecting his crew or helping someone else, finally becoming what he always wanted to be, not just a liar, but a legend. That said, it doesn't have to be permanent death. Maybe he dies and is presumed dead, becoming a folklore hero, or maybe he dies and is remembered like a mythical figure. Either way, it's poetic. His lies weren't just fantasy, they were a prophecy, and the last one, about dying heroically, might just be the most important too. Usopp is related to Mont Blanc Noland, or carries his will. This one's a bit more obscure, but super interesting. The idea that Usopp could be related to Mont Blanc Noland, or at least carry his inherited will. Let's break this down. Noland was a famous explorer and warrior, and above all, someone who was labeled a liar by history. The story goes that he discovered a city of gold, but when he brought others to find it, it was gone. He was executed for being a fraud. Sound familiar? It should, because Usopp is also seen as a liar, and yet time and time again, the things he says somehow come true. In Skypiea, there's even a moment where Usopp connects with Noland's story. He reads about him, he's curious about him, and the parallels start to stack up. Even Luffy casually jokes, "Hey, that's just like Usopp." And later, in Dressrosa, we find out that the Tontada know about Noland and even revere him. Guess what? The Tontada end up revering Usopp too, calling him God Usopp and praising him like a savior. It doesn't end there. Both men have deep ties to themes of truth, lies, and legacy. Both are mocked or misunderstood, but they still fight for others. Both play the role of unlikely heroes who leave big impacts wherever they go. So whether it's by blood or just through a shared destiny, this theory suggests that Usopp is no Nolan's spiritual successor. We don't know much about either of their family trees, but that doesn't really matter in One Piece. Inherited will is often stronger than blood. Roger and Luffy aren't related, yet they share the same drive and D in their names. So Usopp being connected to Nolan doesn't need DNA to be meaningful. And there's a bonus. The current arc, Elbaf, could tie this theory together. Nolan was an adventurer. It wouldn't be weird if he had been to Elbaf. If Usopp finds traces of Nolan there, or even learns something new about his own lineage, this theory could gain massive credibility. And narratively, it's clean. It gives Usopp a deeper purpose beyond just being the crew's sniper. It ties his obsession with lies and legends into the world's larger history. 3. Usopp will forge a legendary weapon, maybe for Luffy. Let's switch gears from destiny and death to something a little more hands-on. Usopp might not be an inventor on Frankie's level, but he's got some serious crafting skills. He built his own slingshot, Pop Green Arsenal, upgraded Nami's claim attack, and constantly modifies his gear. He's basically the crew's low-key weaponsmith. So here's the theory. Usopp will one day create a legendary weapon, either for himself or for someone else on the crew, possibly Luffy. Think about it. In Wano, we saw how powerful weapons like Enma can shape destinies. Legendary swords aren't just cool, they're symbolic. What if Usopp's contribution to the final war is building something iconic? It fits perfectly into his arc. He started with toys and tricks, then moved into serious battle gear. What's the next step? Something that rivals ancient weapons, not necessarily in destruction, but in legend. It could be a slingshot with insane power, or maybe he goes full out and builds Luffy a weapon that enhances his Nika ability. A symbolic sword or shield, something that aligns with the sun god mythos. Here's the kicker. If Usopp does die heroically, see theory number 1, the weapon he leaves behind becomes part of his legacy. People don't just remember the warrior, they remember the weapon. That's how legends are made in One Piece. And hey, it's also a subtle flex on Oda's part. Instead of having the shipwright, Frankie, or the genius, Vegapunk, make the ultimate gear, the liar who no one took seriously ends up crafting a tool that helps win the final war. That kind of twist is exactly Oda's style. Usopp's been improving weapons since day one. This theory just takes it to the next logical level, whether it's creating something for himself to go out in a blaze of glory or giving Luffy a final gift to carry into the last battle. It would be the ultimate payoff for his entire journey. 1. Brook's second awakening, the true power of the Yomi Yomi no Mi. Alright, first up is a banger of a theory, that Brook might not be done evolving. We already know he's got the Yomi Yomi no Mi, the revive fruit, which basically brought him back to life after death, letting his soul return to his body. Even if the body was a skeleton by then. But what if that wasn't even the fruit's final form? What if there's a second awakening of this power that we've only started to see? Now, this idea isn't just pulled out of nowhere. Remember Whole Cake Island? Brook showed off some freaky stuff. Dude literally left his body and had his soul flying around like a spooky ghost version of himself. Full-on stand mode, if you're into JoJo references. That power alone was sick, and it kind of hinted that he's more than just a sword-swinging skeleton with musical vibes. That could have been his first awakening, with a beginning of mastering the fruit beyond the basic revive trick. So the theory goes, what if Brook can push this even further? Like, to the point of manipulating souls in the outside world, not just his own. We're talking full-blown necromancer Brook, summoning spirits, talking to the dead, maybe even traveling to the realm of the dead itself. And here's where things get really interesting. Brook himself mentioned something called the Yomi, a kind of underworld where his soul wandered before finding his body again. That ain't just poetic storytelling. He described it like a real place, a tangible, otherworldly dimension. So what if Oda's playing the long game, and that underworld becomes a crucial location later in the story? Maybe Brook, through an advanced awakening, can go there voluntarily. Could you imagine that? Brook being the only Straw Hat able to freely cross into the land of the dead. That's some game-changing power. This could tie into bigger lore, like maybe the final war has a spiritual dimension, maybe there's a reason Joy Boys will keep reincarnating, maybe there's some dead characters whose guidance is needed to defeat the final villain. And Brook becomes the bridge between the living and the dead. Picture it, Brook closing his eye sockets, concentrating, and boom, he slips into the underworld to have a conversation with Roger, or Odin, or even someone like Joy Boy's soul, if that's a thing. Like, damn. And let's not forget, in One Piece, alternate dimensions aren't unheard of. Blueno's Door fruit opened doors to a pocket dimension. Brûlée had her mirror world. This isn't Naruto-style chakra planes. One Piece canon has alternate realms, so a realm of the dead, totally plausible. This second awakening theory basically turns Brook into one of the most important Straw Hats in the endgame. Imagine if a whole side quest involves going into the underworld to get a secret about the One Piece, and Brook is the only one who can lead the crew there. That would give the skeleton the kind of spotlight he honestly deserves. He's been comic relief, emotional support, and musical king, but this theory turns him into a key player in the end of the world. 2. Brook using music to talk to or temporarily revive the dead. Now this one's juicy and just a little insane in the best way, so check this. What if Brook could use his music, yeah, his actual soul-powered jam sessions, to temporarily bring the dead back to life? Not in a full-on zombie army kind of way, but like short, poetic, meaningful resurrections. Let me set the stage. Brook is the Soul King. That's not just a band name. It's low-key prophetic. He's a literal skeleton powered by his soul, using music that literally touches the souls of people around him. We've seen him calm folks, confuse enemies, boost morale, all with a guitar solo. So the theory goes, what if he takes it even further and uses that music to resonate with the souls of the dead? Imagine there's a major arc and someone important dies, maybe an ally with key info, or someone the crew had bonded with. Normally, that'd be it. Rest in peace. But Brook, feeling the pain and desperation, picks up his guitar, strums a haunting tune, and suddenly, the soul of that person flickers into the scene for 10 minutes, maybe even 1 hour, just enough to talk, say goodbye, share a last message, drop vital lore. Then they fade back into the afterlife. It's not resurrection in the traditional sense, not some full-blooded return to life. It's soul projection, spiritual echo, music-powered ghost chat, and because it's temporary, it doesn't mess with the finality of death that Oda usually respects. What's wild is this isn't even that far from what Brook already does. His soul detaches from his body, his voice reaches into people's hearts. He's literally called the Soul King, and his whole shtick is that he understands souls. So if anyone in the world of One Piece could summon a soul for a limited encore, it's our bony bard. This theory would also tie Brook into so many potential scenes. He could give closure to side characters. He could bring back lost legends for a last few words. Maybe even bring back Ace for a quick Luffy hug, and I'm proud of you, little bro. You know Oda would absolutely ruin us with that scene emotionally. Plus, if this was tied to time, like only within 24 hours of death, it'd create amazing tension. We need to talk to so-and-so, but they died 12 hours ago. Brook, we've got one shot. Cue desperate music and an epic ghost concert. All this also justifies Brook's musician identity being more than comic flavor. If his music literally bends the veil between life and death, it makes his art power, not in a fighting stronger sense, but in a narrative sense. He'd be a bard in the truest mythical sense, a wielder of ancient spiritual power through music. Honestly, this might be one of the coolest power-ups One Piece could ever give to a non-fighter character. A little grim, sure, but poetic, so One Piece. 3. Brook becomes the guardian of the Straw Hats' legacy. Okay, now this last one. This one's gonna punch you in the feelings, because it's not about flashy powers or wild reveals. It's about legacy. The theory? Brook survives everyone and becomes the storyteller, the protector of the Straw Hats' memory. Let's be real, Brook's already over 90 years old. He's a skeleton. The man literally doesn't age anymore. Unless his bones start crumbling, he's functionally immortal. So flash forward 100 years. The Straw Hats are legends. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, all gone. Their tale is told in whispers and songs. But who's there, walking the earth, still jamming on his guitar? Brook. The theory says Brook becomes like a traveling bard or myth keeper. He wanders the world, telling stories through his music. He sings about the adventures of his nakama. Maybe there's a song for each of them. Sanji's fire, Nami's storms, Usopp's bravery. He keeps the dream alive, especially for people in places that never met the Straw Hats personally. Picture this. A village kid hears a song from a traveling skeleton about the pirate king, Luffy, about how he united the seas, broke the chains of oppression, laughed at the end of the world, and the kid asks, was he real? And Brook just smiles and plays another song. Not only is this poetic as hell, it makes perfect sense narratively. Brook has always been the echo of an earlier era. He waited decades for Laboon. He's been through loss and loneliness, and now he'd use that eternal lifespan to remember, to make sure their story never dies. This also brings closure to Brook's arc. He started off with death, loss, isolation. He ends as the soul of the world, literally and metaphorically. It's a little sad, yeah, the idea of him standing by their graves, still strumming, but it's also beautiful, because it means the dream lives on, the laughter echoes. He'd be the guardian of their legend, the bard of the Pirate King's crew, still rocking, still telling their tale. Theory 1. Sanji will create a new style of cooking, alright? So this theory is less about punching bad guys and more about pans and passion. The idea is that Sanji, beyond being one of Luffy's wings and a powerhouse in the crew, could go on to revolutionize the culinary world of One Piece. Not by just cooking better food, but by inventing an entirely new style of cooking, his own signature culinary philosophy. This makes a lot of sense when you think about who Sanji really is. He's not just some guy who cooks for the crew. His identity, his values, his dreams, they all revolve around food. He left everything behind to follow Zeph's ideals, respects food so deeply he'd rather starve than waste it, and he constantly uses cooking as a way to care for others. So what's next for a chef like that? You guessed it, innovation. Sanji has traveled to so many islands and cultures across the Grand Line. He studied cooking styles from all over the world. He learned recipes from Kamabaka, has experience with Sky Island ingredients, Fishman Island dishes, even ancient stuff in Wano. So the theory goes, what if he takes all that knowledge and fuses it into one cohesive culinary philosophy? Not only that, but maybe he cooks differently. We're talking flashy and unique, a mix of martial arts and culinary mastery. Imagine Sanji using his kicks to dice ingredients mid-air or searing meat with Diablo jam. Wild? Yeah, but this is One Piece, and it fits his vibe perfectly. His whole fighting style is kick-based, so why not carry that over to his food prep too? Beyond technique, the style could be something more meaningful, like infusing meals with emotion or spiritual energy. Remember how Sanji made food that physically boosted the Straw Hats' recovery? Maybe his future recipes can blend nutrition, flavor, and strength boosts, becoming a sought-after secret in the culinary world. And if this becomes a movement, imagine chefs around the world following the blackleg style of cooking. Sanji becoming a symbol of revolutionary cuisine, his methods taught in schools across the seas. He'd be the Pirate King of cooking, carrying Zeph's dream of the all blue into every kitchen that follows in his footsteps. This theory is not about flashy battles or political stakes, but it's deeply personal and arguably just as meaningful. It's about growth, legacy, and passion, and it's one of the most fitting futures for a character like Sanji. Theory 2. Sanji will become King of Germa. Now this one's a bit controversial. The idea here is that despite everything Sanji went through with the Vinsmokes, abuse, trauma, rejection, he'll eventually reconcile with them and take over the Germa 66 Kingdom. At first glance, this feels super weird. Sanji hates Germa. He rejected their ideology, refused to wear the raid suit until he had to, and distanced himself from their scientific, heartless culture. So the idea of him becoming king feels off. But let's dig deeper. Germa is still around, still powerful, and still ruled by Sanji's terrible father. But maybe the Vinsmokes start to see the error of their ways, perhaps influenced by how Sanji defied them and still became strong and noble. Maybe they soften, maybe not, but the point is, they come to realize that Sanji is the only one fit to lead them into a better future. Imagine this, Germa is struggling, and Sanji steps in, not for them, but for the people under their rule. He takes the throne and turns the whole kingdom upside down. No more heartless cloning, no more cold-blooded militarism. Under Sanji, Germa becomes a kingdom of compassion and innovation, maybe even focused on healing and food instead of war. And here's where it gets juicy. What if Sanji rebrands Germa as a kingdom based around cuisine? Picture a floating nation of gourmet chefs and restaurants, supported by the best tech Germa has to offer. They sail the seas, helping starving islands, building food networks, and spreading joy through flavor. Sounds crazy? Sure, but it's very Sanji. Now take it even further. What if Germa's new HQ is built above the All Blue? That mythical sea with fish from every ocean. If it exists, Yes, it would be the perfect place for Sanji to build a culinary empire. The Vinsmoke legacy becomes something new, something redemptive. In the end, Sanji wouldn't be Mr. Prince. He'd be Mr. King, but not the cold king of his father's dreams, a ruler of flavor, freedom, and compassion. It's a long shot, but one hell of a satisfying redemption arc for both Sanji and his cursed bloodline. Theory 3, Sanji will fully inherit Zeph's will. Now this one's got that classic One Piece flavor. Legacy. The theory says that Sanji won't just follow in Zeph's footsteps. He'll take on his entire will, completely inheriting everything Zeph stood for. Think about it. Zeph wasn't just Sanji's mentor. He was his father in every way that counts. He taught him to cook, to fight, to be a man of principles. And most of all, he passed on the dream of the All Blue. Sanji already carries that dream, but this theory says it won't stop there. One day, Sanji will run Baratie, not as some nostalgic callback, but as the new symbol of pirate chef culture. Maybe Zeph retires, or maybe he passes away, but Sanji takes over. Not just the restaurant, but the spirit behind it. He turns Baratie into a global chain, or maybe he runs a new version of it aboard a flagship that sails the world. Either way, it becomes a place where anyone from any background can eat, laugh, and live, like Zeph always intended. And maybe, just maybe, Sanji hires other young chefs with troubled pasts, paying it forward the same way Zeph once saved him. Even the parallel is clean. Zeph lost a leg for Sanji. Sanji uses that same leg to rise to the top. Zeph was a pirate and a cook. Sanji becomes a pirate king's right hand and the world's best chef. Zeph taught Sanji to fight with his feet. Sanji perfects that art and teaches others. This isn't just inheritance, it's evolution. Sanji wouldn't just carry Zeph's will, he'd surpass it. He'd honor his old man by becoming even better than he ever dreamed. And that honestly might be the most One Piece kind of ending Sanji could have. Theory 1. Chopper will cure all diseases, even the one that killed Roger. Let's start with the most iconic Chopper theory, the one literally everyone has thought about at least once. Chopper will find a cure for every disease in the world. Yeah, that's the big one. It's not just a theory, really. It feels more like a slow-burning prophecy built into the story from the moment Chopper was introduced. So where does this come from? It all starts with his backstory. Dr. Hiraluk, the guy who changed Chopper's life, had one huge belief: there's no disease that can't be cured. That statement stuck with Chopper, and ever since, it's been his lifelong goal to make it a reality. But here's where it gets juicy. This dream isn't just wishful thinking or a kid's fantasy. In One Piece, dreams have weight. They drive arcs, shape characters, and often define legacies. For Chopper, this dream is his version of the Pirate King goal. And if Luffy's chasing a legend, why wouldn't Chopper? Now let's tie this into the broader story. Gol D. Roger, the Pirate King, died of an incurable illness. That's canon. The guy who changed the world couldn't be saved, even by the best doctors. And that's where this theory levels up. The idea is that Luffy might get the same disease. It wouldn't just be tragic, it would be poetic. Luffy walking the path of Roger only to reach the same roadblock. Except this time, there's Chopper. So imagine this scenario. Luffy gets sick. It's serious. It's deadly. And no one can stop it. But Chopper, now a world-class doctor, finds a way. He does what no one could do for Roger. He cures the incurable. That's the ultimate proof he fulfilled his dream. Not only does he save his captain, but he also redefines what's possible in medicine. And in doing so, he literally saves the future of the world. This theory also works even if Luffy doesn't get sick. Maybe Chopper just keep studying. Maybe we get a post-time skip future, like a 10 to 20 year time jump, and we see him running a clinic, curing the rarest of rare diseases. Either way, he becomes a medical legend, someone people whisper about in the same way they talk about Joy Boy or the Pirate King. But instead of treasure or warfare, his legacy is healing. And it's not just a narrative full circle, it's character fulfillment. Chopper, the little reindeer who was once rejected, feared, and misunderstood, becomes the world's greatest healer. It's peak One Piece character payoff. Theory 2, Chopper will be the key to finding the One Piece. Thanks to his animal talk ability, this one, super underrated and surprisingly logical. Chopper might be the one to help find the One Piece using his ability to talk to animals. Let's break it down. Chopper is a reindeer who ate the human fruit. So yeah, he walks, talks, and acts like a human, but biologically, he's still part animal, and that's key. Throughout the story, we've seen that he can understand and communicate with animals in a way no other Straw Hat can. He acts like a translator for creatures that would otherwise be silent background background details. Now here's where the theory kicks in. What if when they reach the final island, Raftel or Laugh-Tale, the One Piece isn't just sitting out in the open? What if it's hidden? Maybe it's in a cave. Maybe there's some kind of natural protection, and the only ones who know where it is are the island's animals. Yup, not a log pose, not some epic battle, just a bunch of local creatures who've been chilling on that island for centuries and know what's up. And suddenly, Chopper's skill becomes critical. While everyone else is looking for clues, he just talks to a monkey or something and gets the real tea. Yeah, bro, that treasure? It's under that big waterfall. We see weird people go there every few decades. Boom, problem solved. And it's even deeper than that. What if the One Piece is not just treasure, but something symbolic or emotional? Maybe it's connected to Joy Boy, to ancient creatures, or to something the animals on the island protect. Chopper, with his empathy and communication skills, could connect with them and unlock secrets no one else could. It'd be a great twist too. People expect Robin or Luffy to be the key to everything, but Chopper, no one would see that coming. It would give him a major role in the climax and justify his place in the crew beyond being the cute mascot. Also, it reinforces a major One Piece theme. Everyone matters. Every Straw Hat has a purpose, even if it's not flashy. Chopper's been sidelined a bit in combat lately, but this would be a way for Oda to make his unique gift essential to the story's finale. Theory 3. Chopper will create a mobile hospital to help the world. This one is a personal favorite. Chopper might build and operate a mobile hospital ship after One Piece ends. Let that idea sink in for a second. Instead of settling down in a fancy city or living on an island, Chopper continues traveling, but not with pirates. This time he travels as a doctor for the people. His ship is fully equipped. Treatment rooms, lab stations, a surgical area, even beds for long-term patients. Think of it like Barati, but for medicine instead of food. And the best part? The ship moves. It sails from island to island, offering medical care to people who have no hospitals. That's huge in a world made of islands where travel is tough and many communities are isolated. We've already seen how hard it is for people to find good medical treatment in One Piece. From Nami's sickness in Little Garden to Roger's incurable disease, access to care is a real problem. This ship, it solves that. Maybe it's even a fleet, one in each blue. And Chopper, being the legend he is, trains doctors on each one. You could even imagine a Denden Mushi hotline. Someone calls, says their village is in trouble, and the Chopper ship sets sail to help. It's like the Marineford Buster call, but for healing, not destruction. This also connects to Chopper's dream. Healing every disease doesn't just mean discovering cures. It means making those cures accessible. And what better way than bringing the hospital directly to the people? Oda could even show this in a time skip epilogue. Old Chopper, still short and fluffy, running the whole operation, getting hugged by kids on every island, being a symbol of hope. He doesn't need a bounty. His legend is the lives he saved. It's poetic, it's useful, and honestly, it would be the most wholesome legacy in all of One Piece. Theory 1. Nami might be of celestial or divine origin. Let's start with the juiciest one, the idea that Nami might secretly have divine or even celestial dragon lineage. Sounds wild, right? But once you lay out all the breadcrumbs Oda has scattered through the story, it actually starts to feel pretty solid. First, let's talk about how Nami was introduced. She wasn't born in Kokoyashi village like Nojiko. She was found as a baby during a storm, lying in the middle of chaos, and rescued by Bellemere. That's already suspicious. This isn't some orphan adoption cliche. Nami's origin feels deliberately mysterious. Oda didn't need to make it a stormy rescue scene. He chose that. And in One Piece, that kind of detail always comes back later. Now, consider Nami's obsession with money and wealth. While at first it was a survival trait, she needed to buy back her village from Arlong, her love of treasure has stuck around long after she had any need for it. She's not greedy in a selfish way, but her instincts for treasure and economics are practically supernatural. Combine that with her natural elegance, tactical intelligence, and charm, and you've got a character who stands out even beyond her beauty. She often acts like royalty, bossing the boys around, negotiating deals, commanding respect. There's also her ridiculous talent with weather, not just the climate act. Even before she got that tool, she could predict storms and read wind patterns like no one else. Remember in Drum Island when she was sick in bed and still predicted a storm coming? That's not just skill, that's something deeper. It's almost like she's connected to the weather. So what's the theory then? That Nami comes from a bloodline tied to the heavens. Whether it's celestial dragons or something even older, maybe a race of skyfolk with natural weather-related abilities, like the Birkin or Skypians, or even a royal family destroyed in war. It would explain everything. Her weather intuition, her strange origins, her magnetic pull toward wealth, her deep bond with Zeus, her role as the weather witch of the Straw Hats. And here's the kicker. This could be a plot twist near the end of the series. A final revelation about Nami's parents or heritage could give her an emotional arc similar to Sanji's, except hers would be tied to ancient mysteries or lost nobility. It wouldn't change her personality, but it could give her more weight in the final conflict, especially if her heritage ties to the world government, the ancient weapons, or the Void Century. In a story where identity and legacy matter so much, Nami's hidden past is one of the few remaining mysteries we haven't explored, and the deeper her connection to the world's ancient power structures, the more crucial her role could become in the climax. Theory 2, Nami will be key to reaching Laugh Tale through her mapping abilities. Alright, this one hits harder when you think about what Nami's actual dream is. To draw a map of the entire world. Not become Pirate Queen, not find treasure, not fight the world government, just create the ultimate map. Seems simple, right? But here's where the theory goes next level. What if Nami's dream and her cartographic skills are actually essential to finding Laugh Tale? We all know that to reach Laugh Tale, you need the 4 road poneglyphs. Once you have them, you plot the locations and supposedly trace an X to find the final island. That seems easy enough, but the moment you dig into the details, it becomes clear it might not be so simple. Why? Because when the crew first found a road poneglyph, Robin made a curious comment to Nami. She said the glyph wasn't just a location, it resembled a navigation chart. That line might seem minor, but it implies that understanding the final destination isn't just about reading text, it's about interpreting the information as a map. Enter Nami, the best navigator and cartographer in the story. If the road poneglyphs aren't literal GPS coordinates, but instead form a complex, possibly ancient or even mystical chart, then Nami is the only one who could decode it. It wouldn't just be about following the log pose anymore. It would require understanding weather patterns, currents, planetary positions, maybe even celestial navigation, which ties back to the first theory. This makes Nami more than just a support character. It puts her at the heart of the Straw Hats' final journey. Just like how Robin reads the Void Century, Nami could be the one to chart the course to Laugh Tale. And from a narrative standpoint, it's genius. Every Straw Hat plays a role in the final journey. Frankie builds the ship, Jinbei steers it, Robin deciphers the text, Luffy leads, but Nami is the one who actually gets them there, who draws the final line, completes the map, and fulfills her lifelong dream right alongside Luffy's. It turns her cartography into something epic and gives her a legacy far bigger than just being the navigator. Theory 3, Nami will control the weather globally and monetize it. This one's future focused and it slaps. Nami will become the queen of weather manipulation, literally controlling the climate across the world and turn it into a business. We already know that Nami's Climatact, powered by weather balls and now enhanced with Zeus, allows her to manipulate rain, lightning, wind, and even summon massive storms. She's been evolving her weather control abilities for years, and unlike most Devil Fruit powers, hers come from tools and knowledge, meaning they can keep growing indefinitely. So here's the theory. Once the One Piece journey ends, Nami sets up a worldwide weather service. Towns, islands, and entire regions can pay for her to create the weather they need. Crops not growing, she brings rain. Hurricanes on the way, she disperses them. Need sunshine for a festival, boom, clear skies. All custom ordered through Denden Mushi. It sounds insane, but it's actually genius. It fulfills her love for money, it uses her unique talents, and it helps people everywhere. It turns her into a climate wizard and a global celebrity. You could even see this becoming a formal business. Nami's Climacorp, with trained weather techs she oversees. Maybe she works with Vegapunk's old weather tech from Weatheria and builds it into a global network. Maybe she integrates it with sea routes and helps navigators stay safe. She could even work with the New World government post-revolution to prevent famines or natural disasters. This would make Nami the most influential post-crew Straw Hat. Luffy becomes Pirate King. Robin preserves history. Frankie builds the future. But Nami, she controls the skies. And if you're worried about the whole altering weather is dangerous argument, just remember, we're in a world with floating islands, talking whales, and giant elephants carrying entire nations. Realism isn't the point. In One Piece, it's all about dreams, and Nami's dream could literally shape the world's weather, bring peace to storm-ravaged regions, and give her a never-ending supply of treasure in return. Sounds like a win-win. Theory 1. Frankie will recreate Pluton or build a new one. Let's start with the most well-known Frankie theory. He's gonna rebuild Pluton, the ancient weapon. Not just help someone else do it, not just sketch it up, but fully recreate it himself. Back in Eni's lobby, Frankie burned the blueprints for Pluton in front of CP9. But here's the twist. A ton of fans, and this theory, believe he memorized them. Frankie's a genius craftsman with a brain like a supercomputer when it comes to engineering. There's no way he handled something that dangerous without locking it in his head first. Now, we know the original Pluton is supposedly hidden in Wano, but the theory isn't about digging it up, it's about countering it. If the original Pluton is used by the world government or some other threat, the idea is Frankie would build his own Pluton, a counter weapon to stop it, not a copy, not a replica, something completely unique that borrows from the blueprint, but is infused with Frankie's own tech and ideals. It wouldn't be the same weapon, it would be better, because Frankie wouldn't just recreate something from the Void Century. He'd upgrade it with modern tech, Sunny's design principles, and everything he's learned from Vegapunk's lab on Egghead. And that's where this theory really pops off. Frankie has been collecting knowledge for years. He rebuilt his body with Vegapunk's blueprints, built the 1000 Sunny from Atom Wood, and even modified his mecha with insane features. If anyone has the skills to create a modern ancient weapon, it's him. And with the world heading toward all-out war, it makes total sense for him to have a massive role beyond just the shipwright. A custom Pluton could be anything. A mobile warship, a massive mecha, or even an upgraded Sunny. Some fans think the Sunny itself could transform into a Pluton-like machine. Others believe Frankie might build a separate craft, kind of like a last resort battleship. Either way, this would make Frankie crucial in the final battle. Imagine Luffy taking on Emu or the Gorosei while Frankie rolls up in the mech equivalent of Godzilla. Total chaos, total hype, and even narratively it fits. Pluton was once a threat to the world, but Frankie could make it a protector of freedom, a weapon not of destruction but of liberation, just like the Straw Hats themselves. Theory 2. Frankie will build a robot army for the final war. This one's straight out of a mecha anime fever dream, but it works. The theory says Frankie is going to build an army of robots to help in the final war. Sounds wild, but let's break it down. Back in Marineford, the Marines used the pacifistas, robot soldiers modeled after Kuma. They were terrifying, efficient, and basically turned the tide of war. So the idea here is that Frankie takes that concept and flips it. A Straw Hat version of pacifistas. Cyborgs built for freedom. Now think about what we've seen from Frankie so far. He's built the Frankie Shogun, his giant mech, the 1000 Sunny, a ship with weapons hidden all over it, upgraded arms, lasers, and gear using Vegapunk's designs. The guy is basically a one-man robotics lab. He even uses cola as fuel. How is this man not the most anime thing in the story already? So this theory goes, in the lead up to the final war, likely against the world government, Frankie builds a fleet of robot warriors, not thousands, just enough to make a dent. 20 to 30 battle-ready, Sunny-styled mechs with individual functions. Tank type, air type, stealth type, etc. Some might be piloted by allies, like Usopp, Chopper, maybe even Vivi, while others are AI controlled. Could even be remote controlled by Frankie from the Sunny like a commander. And here's the best part, he might not do it alone. Vegapunk is now involved in the story, and he's shown interest in rebellion. If he and Frankie team up, that's a dream team of tech. Between Frankie's creativity and Vegapunk's insane science, a robot army isn't just possible, it's practically guaranteed. Plus, the world is gonna need help. We're talking about a battle against the Celestial Dragons, the Admirals, the Gorosei, maybe even Emu. If Luffy and his core crew are fighting on the front lines, the background forces, Wano warriors, revolutionaries, old allies, will need support. Enter Frankie's robot army. They provide backup, defend civilians, stall fleets. It's not about overpowering the Marines. It's about evening the odds in a chaotic battlefield. This would give Frankie a legendary legacy. He wouldn't just be the guy who built the ship, he'd be the one who built the resistance. Theory 3. Frankie will unlock his final form. ultimate mecha evolution. This is the most hype theory, and honestly, the one that needs to happen. The theory says that Frankie will unlock a final transformation, a fully upgraded version of himself, beyond the Frankie Shogun, beyond the post-time skip body, beyond anything we've seen so far. Here's the idea. Throughout the story, everyone in the Straw Hats has leveled up visually. Luffy got Gear 5, Zoro unlocked advanced swordsmanship, Sanji has his Germa enhancements, Robin has her demon form, even Nami got Zeus. But Frankie, he's kind of been the same since Fishman Island. Yeah, he added new weapons and tech, but he hasn't had that huge glow-up moment. This theory says that's intentional. Oda's saving it. The Sunny itself has hidden compartments. We've seen doors that haven't opened, weapons that haven't fired. The idea is that during the final war, Frankie merges with part of the Sunny or reveals an attachment module that triggers his final form. Think Megazord meets Gundam, a sleek, high-power Frankie mecha hybrid. He wouldn't pilot it like the Frankie Shogun. He'd become it, fully integrated with the system, combining engineering and humanity like never before. The transformation could be triggered by emergency protocols, or maybe by connecting to a Vegapunk satellite or something he pre-built during the Egghead arc. The transformation would come with upgraded lasers, flight, shielding, and artillery, possibly even AI enhancements. And narratively, it gives Frankie a moment. He's often comic relief, but fans know he deserves more. A final battle form would let him shine in a way we haven't seen since Enies Lobby. Picture him saving the crew with a surprise entrance, blasting through enemies, doing the super pose with war music in the background. Even better, imagine if his final form is powered by the Sunny's core. Like, the ship itself trusts him enough to connect with him. That would make Frankie not just the builder of the ship, but part of its soul. Theory 1. Robin will unlock a giant clone army version of herself. Alright, let's start with one of the flashiest Robin theories out there. She'll eventually be able to create full-sized giant clones of herself. Not just hands, not legs, not even the demon-looking form we saw in Wano, but actual full Robin clones that are huge, battle-ready, and possibly numerous. Like an entire army made of Robin. Sounds nuts, right? But the idea has roots in what we've already seen. Back in Enies Lobby, Robin was sprouting dozens of arms and legs. Over time, especially after the time skip, she started combining her sprouts into bigger structures, massive limbs, whole torsos, even a monstrous demon form in Onigashima. So naturally, if she can build parts of herself bigger and bigger, why wouldn't she eventually be able to put all those parts together and make full-body clones of her entire self? And we're not just talking regular size here. The theory suggests giant-scale versions. Think about it. Robin creates a 10-meter-tall version of herself that can wreck buildings, throw enemies around like toys, or just be a walking wall of destruction. Now imagine her sprouting 2 or 3 of these. Or 10th, an army of Robins all sprouting more limbs from their giant arms. It's chaos. Power-wise, it makes sense. The Hana Hana no Mi, Flower Flower Fruit, has insane scaling potential. It lets her replicate her own body as many times as she wants and place them wherever she wants. With enough stamina and training, she could turn into a one-woman army, and with the Straw Hats heading into what's basically the final war against the world government, it would make sense for Oda to give her one last huge, literally, upgrade. The only question is stamina. The bigger the body, the more energy it would take. But hey, Luffy burns through 3 gears a fight. Zoro nearly dies every other arc. Robin's due for her high-risk, high-reward moment, and this would make her terrifying in combat. Not just a support fighter, but an unstoppable tank. The best part? It ties into her personality too. She's always been calm, calculating, but fiercely protective of her crew. A giant clone army would be a perfect way for her to shield them, literally, with her own body. Multiply. Theory 2. Robin is hiding crucial information from the crew. This one's less about power and more about trust. Robin might be hiding key information from the rest of the crew, on purpose. And yeah, this one hits different. Since the time skip, Robin's had access to a lot of poneglyphs. She's read ones in Zoo, Wano, Fishman Island, and probably some off-screen. And what's weird is, she rarely tells the crew what they say. Like, sure, sometimes she shares little bits. This is a road poneglyph, or this talks about Poseidon. But overall, she keeps quiet, really quiet. This theory suggests she's doing that intentionally, not because she's betraying anyone. Far from it, but because what she's reading is so dangerous, so heavy that sharing it too early could make the crew targets, or even destroy their morale. Think about it, Robin might already know the truth about Joy Boy, or what the One Piece is, or how the final war will unfold, but instead of dumping that info and risking chaos, she's waiting for the right moment, probably during the last big arc, maybe even in the middle of a major battle when Luffy needs a push or someone like Emu is revealed. It's a smart narrative move too. Oda's clearly holding off on major Void Century reveals, and since Robin is the only one who can read the poneglyphs, it makes sense to filter that info through her and make her the gatekeeper of those secrets until it matters most. But it's also a bit tragic. Robin has always been the quiet, observant one, carrying the weight of Ohara's destruction, watching people die for knowledge, and now she's shouldering the biggest truths in the world, totally alone. That gives her a crazy amount of internal depth and makes her role in the final act way more impactful than just the historian. Expect a moment near the climax where she finally reveals what she knows, and it changes everything. Theory 3. Robin will rebuild Ohara on Elbaf, the new Ohara theory. This theory is way more wholesome and post-plot. Robin will rebuild the legacy of Ohara on Elbaf, turning it into a new haven for archaeology and truth. It all goes back to her origin. Robin was the only survivor of Ohara, the island of scholars destroyed by the world government for seeking forbidden knowledge. That tragedy shaped her entire life. But now, for the first time in forever, Robin isn't alone. She has allies. She has people willing to fight to protect the truth. And more importantly, she has books. Actual books salvaged from Ohara, hidden, preserved, and now in the hands of Saul and the Elbaf giants. Here's the vision. After the final war, when the world begins to rebuild, Robin doesn't just disappear or retire. She becomes the founder of a new Ohara, built on Elbaf, a place where knowledge is free, history is protected, and future scholars can study without fear of annihilation. Why Elbaf? Because it's the perfect place. The giants are strong, they live long lives, and under Saul's influence, they're becoming more educated and curious. They're not just warriors anymore, they're growing. With Robin's guidance, they could become the guardians of history, and if someone tries to erase this new Ohara like last time, they'll have to go through an army of massive librarians with axes. It's poetic. The island that once hosted the world's knowledge was burned down by fear, but now, thanks to Robin, that knowledge is alive again, and better protected than ever. Plus, it's a legacy move. Robin's goal was never to be a war hero or a political figure. It was to preserve the truth, to uncover what the world government tried to hide, and this theory gives her exactly that, a place where that mission continues long after the Straw Hats' journey ends. Imagine the final scene. Years after the story ends, a young scholar walks into the great library of Elbaf. They see Robin, older, wiser, still reading, still smiling. The camera pans over thousands of books, poneglyph translations, Void Century research, and a plaque that reads, "In memory of Ohara, in defiance of silence." Yeah, that hits. Theory 1. Jinbei has a hidden berserker transformation. Alright, let's kick things off with the wildest idea. Jinbei has an untapped berserker state, a kind of primal transformation only fishmen can access. Now, this isn't just headcanon pulled from thin air. The theory comes straight from Arlong's old statements in the manga. He once mentioned that fishmen have the ability to enter a berserker-like state, an instinctual power-up that makes them faster, stronger, and much more dangerous. In Arlong's case, his eyes turned red, and he went beast mode for a short time. That sounds suspiciously like a shonen power-up trigger, and if someone as mid-tier as Arlong can do it, imagine what Jinbei could do with it. The logic here is that Oda teased this ability early on, and it's just been lying dormant, waiting to resurface in someone who truly represents the pinnacle of fishman strength. That's Jinbei, no contest. He's the most respected fishman in the series, former warlord of the sea, master of fishman karate, and now a straw hat. So how would this berserker state look? Picture Jinbei in battle against someone like Blackbeard, or one of his top commanders. Things are getting intense, maybe he's injured, maybe the crew is in danger. Then bam, eyes go red, muscles tighten, his movements get erratic but powerful, and he starts tearing through his enemies with raw instinct, faster and stronger than ever before. No strategy, no calm demeanor, just rage, honor, and instinct. It wouldn't be a permanent form, more like a break glass in case of emergency moment, and narrative. narratively, it would show that even Jinbei, who is usually the calm, reliable one, has a deep well of emotion and primal energy buried inside. Also consider the timing. Many Straw Hats got major power-ups in Wano. Sanji with his exoskeleton, Robin with Demonio Fleur, Luffy with Gear 5. Jinbei didn't get a major new ability, just showed off more of the same awesome Fishman karate, so he's due. This Berserker mode would be a perfect final upgrade for him in the coming war. Theory 2. Jinbei will become the leader of Fishman Island and bring his people to the surface. This one hits way more on the emotional side of things. Jinbei will be the one to finally lead fishmen to the surface world, completing the dreams of Queen Otohime and Fisher Tiger. This has been building for decades in the story. Fishman Island has always been a symbol of discrimination, isolation, and suffering. Queen Otohime tried to change that with peace. Fisher Tiger tried through revolution, both failed. But Jinbei, he's the perfect balance of both. Strong, respected, and calm enough to lead, but also tough enough to fight when necessary. The idea here is that after the final war, maybe after the world government is restructured or destroyed, there will finally be a window of opportunity for fishmen to come up to the surface. And Jinbei, now a global hero thanks to his journey with Luffy, will be the one to guide them. And this isn't just symbolism, it's Jinbei's purpose. His entire journey has revolved around helping his people, from being in the Sun Pirates, to serving under Whitebeard, to joining Big Mom for protection, to ultimately risking everything to join Luffy. Every move he's made has been about protecting fishmen. Now imagine the ending. Fishman Island is no longer hidden under the sea. Jinbei leads a migration to a new home, maybe somewhere safe in the new world, maybe even Elbaf or somewhere revolutionary. People see fishmen for who they really are. The kids can live without fear. Humans and fishmen work together. It's redemption, it's hope, and it's powerful as hell. And what seals it, Jinbei's position in the Straw Hats. He's not just a crew member, he's a living example of peace between humans and fishmen. He fights alongside humans, he trusts them, he believes in them. So when the dust settles, he's the one who's gonna be able to tell his people, it's time. We can live under the same sky now. Theory 3. Jinbei will unlock a new form of Fishman karate that controls the environment. Now here's a technical one for the martial arts nerds out there. Jinbei is going to take Fishman karate to the next level and use it to manipulate the environment on a massive scale. You already know that Fishman karate is unique. It lets Jinbei use the moisture in the air and even manipulate water like a non-Logia user. That alone is crazy powerful, but the theory says he's only scratched the surface. The future of Fishman karate, using water to create tidal waves, whirlpools, barriers, or even redirect attacks on a battlefield scale. Think about it like this. Jinbei is to Fishman karate what Luffy is to the Gomu Gomu no Mi. He's pushing its limits, breaking expectations. He's not just using it to punch harder, he's reshaping how the entire art works. In a war zone, this new form would let him pull water from the air and use it to create shields. Turn puddles into projectiles, use surrounding rivers, lakes, or even blood, dark, to amplify his attacks. Disrupt enemy formations with water pressure shockwaves. It'd be like a pseudo-water Logia ability without the fruit. There's even a possibility that this new form becomes named, like an advanced style or awakening of the martial art. Maybe he teaches it to other fishmen later. Maybe he creates a school or dojo after the war. And it fits. Jinbei is a martial artist, but also a leader and mentor. It would be perfect for him to end the series not only as a hero, but as the man who reinvented Fishman karate into something legendary. This would also shut down the idea that Jinbei is outpaced by the rest of the Straw Hats. Not even close. This evolution would make him one of the most dangerous fighters on the seas, hands down. Theory 1. Zoro will turn the Wado Ichimonji into a black blade. Let's start with the big one. The theory that Zoro is gonna turn the Wado Ichimonji into a black blade. This is practically a guarantee at this point, not even a maybe. It's like a future spoiler just waiting to happen. So we know there are swords in One Piece that are considered black blades. Mihawk's Yoru is one of them, and even though Oda hasn't fully explained what it takes to turn a sword black, the idea is that it happens when the user infuses their sword with haki consistently over a long period. It's a process, a commitment, a bond between between warrior and weapon, and when that bond reaches its peak, boom, the blade becomes black forever. Now, Zoro has 3 swords, but only one of them is really his. The Wado Ichimonji, the blade that belonged to Kuina, the one tied to his childhood, to his promise, to his entire motivation. That sword isn't just a weapon to Zoro, it's his soul. So if any sword is gonna be permanently transformed, it has to be that one. The theory says Zoro will turn it into a black blade during his ultimate battle, either against Mihawk or against Shiryu. Both make sense. If it's Mihawk, then Zoro forges the blade during the fight and wins, proving he's the new strongest swordsman. If it's Shiryu, maybe Shiryu defeats Mihawk earlier, possibly through cheap tricks, and Zoro takes him down to avenge Mihawk and claim the top spot. Either way, the Wado Ichimonji glowing black mid-fight would be a total goosebumps moment. It wouldn't just be about strength, it'd be about legacy, memory, and completing his journey, and narratively, it fits like a glove. Black blades are a huge mystery in the series. Oda's been sitting on that concept since Thriller Bark, so having Zoro figure it out, live it, and do it makes perfect sense. Especially with Enma teasing that transformation already, and who knows, maybe after turning the Wado black, he turns all 3, triple black blade style. Let's go. But the theory holds that Wado comes first, and that one has emotional weight behind it. It's not just a sword, it's Kuina, it's childhood, it's a promise kept. Theory 2, Zoro's eye is closed because it's hiding a hidden power. Alright, theory 2 is an old one, and yeah, it's meme-worthy at this point, but it still has potential. Zoro's closed eye is hiding a secret power. Ever since the time skip, Zoro's been rocking that closed left eye. We've never seen it open. No explanation, no injury, just a scar and nothing more. And this is weird, because in One Piece, if someone loses an eye, they usually still use it. Shanks, Sabo, Rayleigh, they all have eye scars, but their eyes are wide open. So why is Zoro's closed? The theory says he's keeping it shut because it hides something dangerous. A latent ability. Maybe it's tied to observation haki on steroids or some cursed vision Mihawk gave him during their training. Maybe he's suppressing something to avoid accidentally going full monster mode. It could even be a form of haki we haven't fully seen yet, like Future Sight, but dialed up to 100. Now yeah, people joke that Zoro's eye has a Sharingan or that he's hiding the Rinnegan, but jokes aside, the mystery is real. If Oda gave him a scar and closed the eye for no reason, it'd be bizarre storytelling. Here's where the theory gets spicy. Zoro will open his eye in the most critical moment of the story, not just because he needs more power, but because something unlocks. Maybe his vision expands, maybe he becomes hyper aware in battle, maybe he sees the flow of haki, something changes, and narratively, it tracks. Zoro's the kind of guy who holds back until the moment calls for it. Think of it like Goku removing the weighted clothes before a serious fight. If Zoro's been self-limiting himself this whole time, keeping that eye closed until he absolutely needs to go full power. It's the perfect setup for a late stage power boost. He's had major fights, King, Pika, Killer, but maybe his real awakening hasn't hit yet. This eye could be the trigger, the transformation from warrior to legend. Is this theory likely? Honestly, probably not, but if it happens, it'll be one of the most hype scenes in the entire series. Theory 3, Zoro will open a dojo after the final war and train the next generation, including girls like Kuina. Let's round this out with a post-endgame theory. Zoro will retire and open a dojo, teaching the next generation of swordsmen and swordswomen. It's simple, but it hits deep. After Zoro becomes the world's strongest swordsman and helps Luffy become Pirate King, what's left for him? He's not the type to sit on a throne. He doesn't want fame or luxury. He lives for the sword, and he fights for those he believes in. So what happens when there are no more battles to fight? He gives back. This theory says Zoro returns to the dojo where he trained as a kid, the one where Kina fell down the stairs, or whatever really happened. And instead of just hanging out, he becomes the new master. He trains young kids, helps them discover their style, and spreads the art of the sword. But here's the best part. He opens the dojo to girls. Zoro saw firsthand how Kuina's potential was crushed by societal expectations. She was told she couldn't be the best because she was a girl, and that haunted Zoro. Now that he is the best, he has the power to rewrite that narrative. He starts mentoring anyone who wants to learn. Boys, girls, whoever. He shows them that strength comes comes from spirit, not gender. He passes on what he learned from Mihawk, from his own journey, and maybe even from his opponents. He becomes the bridge between old and new. It's the most peaceful, fulfilling end Zoro could get. No more blood, no more war, just discipline, training, and wisdom. And imagine the legacy, a generation of elite swordsmen and swordswomen who all say, "I learned from Zoro, the man who fought the Pirate King's battles." Maybe one of them even looks like Quina. Maybe one of them becomes the next greatest swordsman, and Zoro, smiling with a sake bottle, just nods like good. It'd be emotional, powerful, and honestly, perfect. Theory 1. Luffy will unlock a new form beyond Gear 5, like Gear 5 Plus or a Final Awakening. Let's start with the most straightforward and hype-packed idea. Luffy hasn't reached his final form yet. Yeah, Gear 5 is amazing, hilarious, powerful, cartoonish, but that doesn't mean it's the end. The theory goes like this. While Gear 5 is Luffy's awakened state, it might not be the complete awakening of the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika. We've seen how Oda loves to surprise us with extra forms. Remember how Gear 4 had Bound Man, Snake Man, and Tank Man? So why would Gear 5 not have variations too? Think about it. Gear 5 debuted in 2022. One Piece will likely keep running until at least 2027 to 2030. Are we really going to watch Luffy use the same form for the next 5+ years without any upgrades? It doesn't feel like Oda's style. Fans get bored and merchandise needs fresh designs. Yeah, that matters too. So what kind of evolution could we get? This theory suggests we'll see either a Gear 5 Plus, like a refined, stronger, more complete version of the awakening, a god mode form where Luffy fully embodies the sun god, maybe glowing, maybe more serious, maybe faster and more lethal, or even a dark version of Nika. Sounds wild, but it's been floated before, like an inner conflict where Luffy taps into a dangerous, destructive version of his powers under extreme stress. We don't know the full ceiling of Nika's abilities. The fruit itself is mysterious. Joy Boy had it before, and he failed. Maybe that's the key. Luffy has to go beyond what Joy Boy could do. Gear 5 might be what Joy Boy used, but Luffy, he'll take it further. Narratively, it would be sick. Imagine Luffy losing to Blackbeard or Emu, and suddenly, boom, he snaps into a whole new state. Maybe it's triggered by protecting someone. Maybe his heart beats at a new rhythm. Whatever it is, it shocks everyone, and he turns the tide of the war in that moment. So yeah, Gear 5 ain't the end. It's the doorway, and what comes after is probably going to blow the roof off the fandom. Theory 2. Luffy will talk to Joy Boy or Roger using the voice of all things. Now this one's weird, but really cool. The theory says Luffy will have a conversation with Joy Boy, Gul D, Roger, or both, despite them being dead. How's that supposed to happen? Through something Oda introduced long ago, the voice of all things. Luffy has shown he can hear it. He understood Zunisha. He picked up things that others couldn't. So what if the voice of all things isn't just about listening to whales and poneglyphs? What if it's about communicating with the past? The theory is that somewhere along the journey, maybe at Laugh Tale or in a super spiritual moment, Luffy taps into this voice and reaches the echo of Joy Boy or Roger's will. We're not talking ghosts or spirits. This would be more like a memory or a soul-deep conversation that transcends time. Fans imagine a scene where Luffy sits down, maybe in a dream, maybe in a space outside reality, and Joy Boy appears, or Roger, or both. They chat, joke, fight, laugh. Luffy says he'll succeed where they failed. Joy Boy tells him he's finally the right guy to carry the torch. It sounds crazy, but think about how emotional and poetic it would be. Luffy doesn't idolize Roger, but he walks his path. He carries the inherited will, and unlike others, he does it his way. Talking to those two giants of the past would validate Luffy's journey, but also let them pass on unfinished business. Maybe they give advice. Maybe they leave cryptic last words. Maybe Joy Boy just laughs and says, "You figured it out, huh?" And if you tie this theory into Brook's soul powers, or some ancient poneglyph type mechanism, it's not even that hard to justify. One Piece has talking ships after all. This is way less of a stretch. Is it likely? Who knows, but if it happens, you can bet fans will lose their minds. And honestly, Luffy and Joy Boy sitting at a table, cracking jokes before the final war? I'm down. Theory 3. Luffy isn't truly free. He's a prisoner of destiny. Now for the most philosophical and emotionally deep theory. Luffy isn't really free and never has been. This one hits hard because it challenges everything Luffy stands for. His whole journey is about freedom. He doesn't want to rule, doesn't want power, just wants to live on his own terms. He's the sun god, the joyful warrior, the guy who breaks chains. That's who he is. But what if that's exactly what was meant to happen? Look at the facts. Luffy inherited Roger's will. He ate the Nika fruit by chance. He was saved by Shanks, trained by Rayleigh, mentored by Garp, and carried by fate time and time again. The stars aligned for him to become Joy Boy. There's even a moment in the manga where someone says, maybe it's not his dream, it's his destiny. That line sticks. Because if Luffy is destined to do all this, is he really free? Or is he just a cog in a prophecy machine? This theory suggests that Oda is setting up a meta-narrative twist, that One Piece isn't just about reaching Laugh Tale, it's about breaking free from destiny itself, that Luffy's true final challenge won't be beating Imu or changing the world. It'll be rejecting the idea that he was meant to do any of it. Maybe the final poneglyph says, this is the end. Joy Boy will do XYZ, and Luffy says, nah. Maybe he finds the One Piece and doesn't want to use it the way everyone expects. Maybe he doesn't want to be Joy Boy. Maybe the real ending is Luffy finally making a choice that breaks the cycle. That would be bold, deep, a total gut punch for fans. But it would make Luffy's freedom real, because right now, everything he's done has felt like it was guided. The world government feared him before he was even strong. His bounty reflects his destiny, not his crimes. He's not a rogue, he's fated. So this theory flips the story. The man who wants to be the most free in the world is actually trapped in the most rigid fate of all, and only by denying that fate can he be truly free. Damn. Which Straw Hat would be able to beat each version of Luffy? Let's get started by breaking down Luffy's power over the course of the series, from the East Blue all the way to the Wano arc. Anyway, we obviously have to measure Luffy's power based on the different arcs, so I decided to split it into phases, because even though Luffy has his gears, it's not the same thing using second gear for the first time versus how he uses it now. That's why I think the term phase fits better. In total, I broke it down into 6 phases. Phase 1, from the very start of the series up until Logtown. Phase 2 covers Arabasta and Skypiea, where Luffy starts getting a bit stronger and more experienced. Phase 3, Water 7, Enies Lobby, Thriller Bark, Sabaody, and Marineford. This is where he unlocks second and third gear. Phase 4, post time skip in Fishman Island and Dressrosa. Here he's got gear 4th, Haki, and a massive power boost. Phase 5, Whole Cake Island, where he gains Snake Man and the ability to see into the future. Phase 6 starts with the Wano arc, where he unlocks Gear 5 and Advanced Conqueror's Haki, and his power level just goes completely insane. Alright, so let's kick this off with Phase 1, which basically covers the beginning of the series up until Logtown. We're talking about that baby Luffy, the rookie who just left his village to chase his dream of becoming king of the pirates. At this point in time, Luffy's basically a rubbery punching bag with a couple of basic gum moves under his belt, and zero knowledge about Haki, battle strategies, or even real combat experience. Yeah, sure, he's got heart, he's got ambition, and he's already thrown down with a few East Blue baddies like Buggy and Arlong. But let's be real, compared to who he is now, this version of Luffy is a total lightweight. The dude was basically winging it. Now imagine throwing current day Straw Hats against this baby Luffy. It's a bloodbath, honestly. Let's get the obvious ones out of the way first. Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei would absolutely annihilate him. No contest. These three are monsters even in the current timeline. If you drop them back in Phase 1, they wouldn't just beat Luffy, they'd erase him. If Oda had written them like that from day 1, the series would have ended in Chapter 2. No cap. Next up, we got Brook. And listen, people love to clown on Brook for being the comic relief, but don't sleep on this skeleton. His speed is insane, his freezing sword attacks are dangerous as hell, and his mastery over the Yomi Yomi no Mi makes him a real threat. Against Phase 1 Luffy, he's slicing and dicing before Luffy can even stretch his arm. Frankie, same story. Luffy wouldn't stand a chance. Frankie's got raw power, a tanky body, weapons galore, lasers, missiles, the works. He'd literally just blast blasts Luffy into orbit with a radical beam. Luffy's punches back then wouldn't even scratch the cola-powered beast. Even Chopper, who people love to call useless, would demolish Luffy at this point. Why? Because of Monster Point. That form alone is enough to turn Luffy into a literal rag doll. Doesn't matter if Chopper's a cinnamon roll most of the time, when he goes full beast mode, Phase 1 Luffy is toast. Now let's talk Robin. After everything we saw from her in Wano, especially that demonic form or whatever the hell that was, she'd body Luffy. Just one giant arm grabbing his neck and boom. Fight's over. He wouldn't even know what hit him. Then we get to Usopp, and this one might sound like a debate for some people, but hear me out. Current Usopp has observation haki, insane aim, sneaky tactics, and all those weird seed attacks. He's basically a sniper with a loadout of traps and projectiles. And against Phase 1 Luffy, who charges headfirst into everything, Usopp would wipe the floor with him using nothing but brains and tricks. He wouldn't even need to get close. So now, who's left? Nami. And yeah, sorry Nami fans, but she's the only one who probably couldn't beat Luffy, even at this rookie stage. I mean, yeah, she's got Zeus now, and that does make her super strong, especially in terms of lightning damage. But the dude is made of rubber. Literally, thunderbolts just slide right off him. Even if she goes full Zeus mode and zaps him with all she's got, Luffy's gonna eat that and come back with a gum pistol to the face. Lights out, Nami. No hard feelings. So that's the rundown for Phase 1. To recap, winners against rookie Luffy: Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei, Brook, Frankie, Chopper, Robin, Usopp. Loser, Nami. 8 Straw Hats stomp Luffy at this point. Only one walks away with an L. That's just how much Luffy has grown through the story. In the early days, the man had potential and a devil fruit, but that's about it. Against the crew today, he wouldn't even make it to the Grand Line, and that's the beauty of this little breakdown, seeing just how far Luffy's come and how much stronger the rest of the crew has gotten too. But in this specific version, rookie Luffy's got no chance, except of course against Nami. Sorry girl. Phase 2. Arabasta and Skypiea era. Alright, in Phase 2, we're jumping into Luffy's early Grand Line days, specifically Arabasta and Skypiea. At this point, he's a bit stronger than his East Blue self. He's got more fighting experience, a few more creative uses of his devil fruit, and the guy has taken down a warlord. But don't get it twisted, he's still far from what he becomes later. No haki, no gears, just raw instinct and rubber. Now, let's drop current Straw Hats into this stage and see who's mopping the floor with this version of Luffy. First up, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei. Same deal as Phase 1. They absolutely steamroll him. These guys are just built different. No way Phase 2 Luffy could keep up with any of them. It's not even a contest, it's a beatdown. Then you've got Brook. It's a little closer than before, sure. Luffy now has more grit and knows how to handle strong opponents. But still, Brook's crazy speed and ice-based attacks make him a massive threat. Rubber or not, Frozen is frozen, and Brook can absolutely lock Luffy down and finish him off. So yeah, Brook still takes the win. Frankie? Same story. The guy's a walking war machine. Luffy doesn't have the firepower or durability yet to go toe-to-toe with Frankie's arsenal. Radical beams, punches, iron body. Frankie's got too many tools for this version of Luffy to survive. He'd get flattened. Chopper keeps his monster point, so yeah. Once again, it's like watching a gorilla slap a kid. Luffy gets ragdolled. Chopper may not be the most consistent fighter, but when he's in beast mode, he's a serious problem for pre-haki Luffy. Robin gets a little more interesting. Phase 2, Luffy has better reflexes now, so she might have a harder time catching him, but considering how ridiculously strong her Wano era form is, demon hands, massive range, and absurd strength, yeah, she's still winning. It might not be easy, but she's got this. Usopp versus Luffy here is actually a closer fight than before. Luffy is smarter, tougher, and hits harder than in Phase 1, but Usopp's current version has observation haki, long-range attacks, and that sneaky Trapmaster brain. Give him some prep time and he'll cook up a plan to take Luffy out without even needing to trade blows. So yeah, I'm giving it to Usopp again, but it'd be tight. Winners against Phase 2, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei, Brook, Frankie, Chopper, Robin, Usopp. Loser, again, Nami. So yeah, once more, almost everyone stomps him. Luffy's definitely improved from Phase 1, no doubt, but he's still not even close to where the rest of the crew is right now. The power gap is still massive. You can tell just how much each Mugiwara has grown when you put them next to one of Luffy's older versions. And yeah, it makes you wonder, how the hell did this rubber kid survive so long back then? Phase 3, Water 7, Eni's Lobby, Thriller Bark, Sabayati, and Marineford. Alright, now things start to get spicy. Phase 3. Luffy is a serious step up. He's got 2nd gear and 3rd gear in his arsenal now, and even though he doesn't fully master them yet, they give him crazy boosts in speed and raw power. He's not just scrapping anymore. He's blitzing CP9 agents and throwing down with warlords. Still no Haki though, so he's not untouchable. Let's run it down. Who among the current Straw Hats can still beat him at this stage? Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei. Still on top, no question. Even with 2nd and 3rd gear, Luffy doesn't have the skill or durability to survive a serious fight against any of them. Zoro's strength and precision, Sanji's speed and fire kicks, and Jinbei's Fishman karate plus water manipulation. All of them beat him clean. No surprises here. Now, let's talk about Brook. This one's actually a bit closer. Luffy's 2nd gear cancels out some of Brook's speed advantage, and 3rd gear gives Luffy big destructive power, but Brook's still dangerous. If he lands even one of his soul-freezing attacks, Luffy's rubber body might get locked up or shattered. Brook also has that weird awakening-like effect with his fruit, super underrated. So yeah, Brook would still win, but it wouldn't be a walk in the park anymore. It'd take effort. Frankie, pretty much the same situation. Luffy's stronger now, and his new gears give him ways to break through Frankie's defenses, but Frankie's still got a full arsenal. Lasers, cannons, huge punches. If he plays it smart, he can land something big and end the fight. It'd be a brawl, but I still give Frankie the W Chopper, with Monster Point is still a massive powerhouse. Luffy can hit harder now, sure, but Chopper in full monster form is a freak of nature. Unless Luffy lands a direct gear 3rd punch early on, Chopper would overpower him. Strength-wise, he's still got the edge. Now, this is where we start seeing people fall off. Robin is one of the first to go. Yeah, her Wano form is scary, but this Luffy is fast, like really fast, and hits hard. Robin doesn't start fights at full power, and she needs a moment to set up her attacks. Luffy with gear 2nd would rush her before she can react, and 1 or 2 solid punches would take her out. She's out of the race at this point. Usopp also hits a wall here. Even with Haki and all his clever gadgets, Luffy's way too fast now. Usopp would struggle just to land a clean shot. He might hold out for a bit with some traps or tricks, but Luffy's speed and brute force would break through eventually. So yeah, Usopp's out too. Still winning against Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei, Brook, Frankie, Chopper. Now losing Robin, Usopp, Nami. We're starting to see a clearer divide now. Luffy's evolving fast, and it's enough to knock off some of the mid-tier Straw Hats. But the heavy hitters, the ones with raw power, speed, or overwhelming ability are still too much for him. The fight's getting harder for them, but they still come out on top. Phase 4, Fishman Island and Dressrosa, post-time skip gear 4th era. Now we're entering real territory, post-time skip Luffy. This is when the boy starts acting like a beast. He's got Haki, he's trained with Rayleigh, and most importantly, gear 4th is officially in play. Boundman, King Kong gun, all that jazz. Luffy at this stage is no joke. But even so, let's see who in the current Straw Hat lineup can still put him down. Starting with the usual suspects, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei. They're still in the race. Zoro is still a monster. Luffy's gear 4th is wild, but Zoro's got that unmatched durability, raw power, and swordsmanship that can keep up with almost anyone. It wouldn't be easy, but Zoro could take the W if he goes all in. Sanji, same deal. It's getting closer now because Luffy's firepower and speed are out of control, but Sanji's genetically enhanced, has the raid suit, and skywalking agility. He could dodge, hit back, and wear Luffy down enough to win, but it wouldn't be a stomp. Jinbei, still a threat. His Fishman karate is tailor-made to counter Luffy, especially with water manipulation and the ability to redirect force. He could slow Luffy down, deflect attacks, and keep chipping away. It'd be tough, but I'd still say Jinbei could win, though it'd be closer than before. Now, let's talk about who starts dropping out of the game. Brook sadly just can't keep up anymore. His ice attacks and speed are impressive, but Luffy's current level of speed and destructive power is ridiculous. Gear 4th punches would one-shot him if they connect. Brook's cool, but he's out. Frankie is next. Even with his brute strength and weaponized body, Gear 4th Luffy just hits too hard and too fast. Unless Frankie lands something like a radical beam early, he's getting outpaced and crushed. Luffy's dodging more now, hitting harder, and tanking damage better. Frankie's done. Chopper, yeah. Monster Point is cool, but it's not enough anymore. Luffy could could smack him with a King Kong gun and send him into orbit. Luffy's brute strength is now on a completely different level. Chopper's out too. Still capable of beating Gear 4th Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei eliminated, Brook, Frankie, Chopper, Robin, Usopp, Nami. The power gap is now massive. Luffy's Gear 4th makes him a mini Kaido. If you can't keep up with that level of force, you're done. Only the monster trio remains in the running, and from here on out, it's only gonna get tougher for them. Phase 5. Whole Cake Island, Snake Man plus Future Sight era. Alright, now we're stepping into Whole Cake Island, Luffy's turning point as a full-on monster. Not only does he have Gear 4th, but he adds Snake Man, giving him crazy speed and flexibility. And on top of that, he learns to see into the future with observation haki. This version of Luffy is an absolute menace, so who can still keep up with him at this level? Let's start with Zoro. Even though Luffy's pulling off insane speed feats and reading attacks before they happen, Zoro is still hanging in there. Why? Because Zoro has Advanced Conqueror's Haki, his durability is off the charts, and the man literally reopened Kaido's scar. He might not win easily, but yeah, Zoro could still take this version of Luffy down. Sanji though? This one's tough. Sanji has the raid suit, his Germa upgrades, Diable Jambe. He's fast, strong, and built to last. But Luffy now sees attacks before they're thrown and hits like a truck. It's super close. Honestly, this could go either way depending on the flow of battle. Sanji might win sometimes, Luffy might win others. It's basically a 50-50. Let's just call it a draw and move Sanji forward. But barely. Now on to Jinbei, and here's where things change. Jinbei is still strong, obviously, with his Fishman Karate and solid defense. But Snake Man Luffy is just too much. He's faster, hits from weird angles, and can see Jinbei's moves coming before they even land. Jinbei wouldn't be able to keep up with that tempo, especially since Snake Man is relentless. Jinbei's officially out. So yeah, the monster trio shrinks by 1. Winners: Zoro 50-50 draw, Sanji out, Jinbei, Brook, Frankie, Chopper, Robin, Usopp, Nami. So now only Zoro is clearly above this version of Luffy, and Sanji is on the fence. Everyone else is totally outclassed. Snake Man is like Luffy on steroids. Faster, smarter, harder to hit. You need some serious power or top tier haki to even stand a chance now. Phase 6, Wano Arc, Gear 5 plus Peak Haki era. Alright, final phase, Wano. This is peak Luffy. Gear 5 is in play. He's got Advanced Armament Haki, Advanced Observation Haki, and even Advanced Conqueror's Haki. He can punch through you from the inside, dodge your attacks before you throw them, and coat his fists in lightning and cartoon logic. Oh, and did I mention he can warp reality like a Looney Tunes god? Luffy right now is absolutely broken. This is not the same pirate that was struggling back in Dressrosa or Whole Cake. This is Joy Boy 2.0, bending the world to his will. So let's see who's left. Sanji. He barely managed to tie with Luffy back in Phase 5 when Snake Man was the max. But now, forget it. Gear 5 Luffy is on another planet. Sanji's fast, durable, genetically enhanced, but he has no answer to reality warping toon powers, future sight, and insane haki layering. He's out, clean KO, only Zoro remains, and this fight would be wild. Zoro has Advanced Conqueror's haki, monstrous attack power, and probably the highest durability in the crew aside from Luffy himself. The guy took an attack from 2 Yonkos and stayed standing. If anyone could take Luffy on, it's him, but even Zoro has limits. Luffy with Gear 5 isn't just powerful, he's unpredictable. He turns the battlefield into his playground, attacks from angles you can't even prepare for, and hits with enough force to yeet Kaido. Zoro might hold out for a while, and he definitely pushed Luffy to go all out. But in the end, Luffy takes it, barely, but he wins. Zoro's not far behind, he's right there, but he's still one step below full Gear 5 Luffy. Sanji eliminated Zoro, puts up a hell of a fight but still loses, so in the end, no one beats Gear 5th Luffy. He's the top of the mountain now. The crew has monsters, for sure, but Luffy's just different. He's become what every Straw Hat has followed from the beginning, the strongest pirate in the world. Who the final pairings for each of the Straw Hats might be? When it comes to Sanji, the Straw Hat crew's hopeless romantic, his potential relationship with Pudding feels like the most natural fit. Throughout One Piece, Sanji has been portrayed as someone who easily falls head over heels for any attractive woman he meets. But with Pudding, things were different. Their bond during the Whole Cake Island arc showed genuine chemistry, especially considering how Pudding initially manipulated him, but later revealed her true feelings. Pudding's insecurities about her third eye were a central part of her character. She spent most of her life feeling rejected and ashamed because of it. Yet Sanji was one of the few people who complimented her third eye sincerely, calling it beautiful and making her feel accepted for the first time. That moment carried so much emotional weight that it hinted at something deeper between them, the kiss they shared. Although Sanji doesn't remember it due to Pudding using her devil fruit powers to erase his memory, was a bittersweet moment. It left fans wondering if their story might continue later in the series. It's possible that Oda could bring them back together, especially since Pudding's devil fruit could allow her to restore Sanji's memory of the kiss and their connection. While Pudding is currently younger than Sanji, the timeline of One Piece is fluid, and if a couple of years pass in the story, this could easily resolve itself. It's worth noting that she's the only woman so far in the series who has truly connected with Sanji on a deeper emotional level, making her a standout choice for his romantic future. Their relationship, if further developed, could become one of the most heartfelt and rewarding subplots in the series, adding a layer of personal growth to Sanji's character beyond his usual comedic antics. After all, what's more compelling than seeing a hopeless romantic finally finding someone who understands and loves him for who he is? Usopp's potential romantic future seems just as clear as Sanji's, with Kaya being the most logical and heartfelt choice. From the very beginning of One Piece, Kaya has been a significant figure in Usopp's life. She was one of the first people to believe in him, supporting him even when others dismissed him as a liar or a troublemaker. During the Syrup Village arc, their bond was established as more than just a friendship. Kaya admired Usopp's wild stories and infectious energy, and Usopp clearly cared deeply for her, even risking his life to protect her from Kuro's sinister plot. Since then, she has remained a background figure in the story, but her connection to Usopp hasn't been forgotten. In some cover stories and references, it's shown that Kaya continues to follow Usopp's journey and achievements, suggesting she still holds him in high regard. Fans of the live-action adaptation also noticed an interesting moment, a kiss between Usopp and Kaya. While it isn't canon to the manga, it does reflect a sentiment that many fans already share, that these two are meant to be together. If Oda supervised that scene, it could even hint at his own intentions for their future. What makes Usopp and Kaya's pairing so compelling is the idea of growth. Usopp started as a small-town dreamer, spinning tall tales of his bravery. Now he's living those stories as a true warrior of the sea. Imagine him returning to Syrup Village one day, sitting under that same tree where he once told exaggerated tales, and sharing his real adventures with Kaya feels like the perfect culmination of his character arc. It's not just about romance, it's about fulfillment and coming full circle. Kaya's gentle and caring nature also complements Usopp's energetic and imaginative personality. Together, they could build a future rooted in mutual respect and admiration, making them one of the most heartwarming potential couples among the Straw Hat crew. Robin and Frankie are one of the most popular ships among the Straw Hat crew, and it's easy to see why. They share a unique connection that has been subtly developed over the course of the series, making them a fan-favorite duo. While Oda has stated that romance isn't a major focus in One Piece, the interactions between these two characters often spark speculation. Their bond started to take shape during the Enies Lobby arc, where they both played pivotal roles in rescuing each other. Both were captured and faced dire circumstances, Frankie at the hands of CP9, and Robin under the threat of being erased from history. Their shared experiences created a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that feels deeper than the camaraderie shared among the rest of the crew. Throughout the series, small moments between Robin and Frankie have stood out. From lighthearted banter to moments of care and trust, their interactions often carry a subtle, affectionate tone. Oda has even hinted at their closeness in some color spreads, where Robin and Frankie are often depicted near each other, interacting in ways that suggest a bond beyond simple friendship. These details may seem minor, but in a story as meticulously crafted as One Piece, they rarely feel accidental. Their personalities complement each other as well. Robin's calm, intellectual demeanor balances Frankie's loud and eccentric personality, creating a dynamic that's both amusing and heartwarming. Additionally, both are among the more mature members of the crew, which makes them a natural pairing in terms of life experience and emotional depth. If Oda were to explore romance within the crew, Robin and Frankie would be an excellent choice. Their relationship feels organic, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. It's not hard to imagine them supporting each other as partners, combining Robin's quiet strength and wisdom with Frankie's boldness and creativity to form a truly powerful powerful duo. Whether or not this ship becomes canon, it's already one of the most beloved by fans for all the right reasons. Brook is a unique case among the Straw Hat crew when it comes to relationships. As a living skeleton who has already experienced life, death, and a second chance, his character stands out in ways that make the idea of a traditional romantic pairing feel almost unnecessary. Instead, his strongest emotional connection is with Laboon, the giant whale waiting faithfully for his return. Brook's bond with Laboon goes beyond friendship. It's a promise that has defined much of his journey. Laboon's unwavering loyalty and Brook's determination to reunite with him create a deeply moving storyline that serves as a metaphor for love, loyalty, and the power of keeping one's promises. While this connection isn't romantic in the traditional sense, it's one of the most heartfelt relationships in One Piece. Brook's flirtatious nature and comedic attempts to ask women if he can see their panties are more of a running gag than a genuine pursuit of love. It's part of his playful personality and fits the whimsical tone of the series, but it doesn't suggest a deeper longing for a romantic partner. Instead, Brook seems content with his role as the crew's eccentric yet wise elder, bringing joy and music to everyone around him. What makes Brook's story so powerful is the idea that not everyone needs a romantic partner to feel fulfilled. His love for music, his devotion to his crew, and his promise to Laboon give his life purpose and meaning. If anything, his story is a reminder that love can take many forms, and the connections we make don't always have to fit conventional molds. Ultimately, Brook's ship isn't with another person, but with Laboon, symbolizing the enduring bonds of friendship and loyalty. It's a beautiful and fitting resolution for a character who has already experienced so much loss, yet remains full of hope and joy. In a way, Brook's journey is a testament to the idea that love, whether romantic or not, can transcend time, distance, and even death itself. Zoro's potential romantic future is one of the most debated topics among One Piece fans, and two main candidates often come up in discussions: Tashigi and Hiyori. Both characters have unique connections with Zoro, but their dynamics with him are quite different, leading to compelling arguments for either pairing. Tashigi, the marine swordswoman, has been linked to Zoro largely because of her striking resemblance to Quina, Zoro's childhood friend, and the person who inspired his dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. However, this resemblance is a double-edged sword. While some fans view it as a reason for a potential connection, it's also clear that Zoro feels uncomfortable around Tashigi because she reminds him so much of Quina. This discomfort could make it difficult for him to view her as anything other than a reminder of his past. That said, Tashigi's determination to become a better swordswoman and her sense of justice do resonate with Zoro's values. Over the series, there have been moments where Zoro shows concern for her, albeit in his own gruff way, and Tashigi seems to have a level of respect for Zoro's skill as a swordsman. If Oda were to develop this relationship further, it could revolve around Zoro helping Tashigi grow as a fighter while coming to terms with the similarities she shares with Quina. However, their conflicting roles as pirate and marine could also be a significant barrier. Hiyori, on the other hand, presents a more recent and arguably stronger case as a romantic interest for Zoro. During the Wano arc, Hiyori and Zoro shared several significant moments. After Zoro's intense battle with Killer, Hiyori cared for his injuries, showing a level of tenderness and admiration that hinted at a deeper connection. Her gratitude for Zoro's efforts to protect Wano and avenge her family further deepened this bond. Unlike Tashigi, Hiyori doesn't evoke any painful memories for Zoro. Instead, she represents a new chapter in his journey. Fans have speculated about a future where Zoro remains in Wano as a protector of the country, possibly serving as an aide to Momonosuke, the new shogun, while staying by Hiyori's side. This scenario aligns with Zoro's samurai-like demeanor and his connection to Wano's culture, particularly as a swordsman, which is more likely. While both options have merit, Hiyori feels like the more natural and emotionally fulfilling choice for Zoro. Her admiration for him and the way she openly cares for his well-being stand in stark contrast to the tension-filled interactions he has with Tashigi. Furthermore, Zoro's potential role as Wano's protector fits seamlessly with his character arc, and having Hiyori by his side would complement that narrative beautifully. Ultimately, Zoro's future, romantic or otherwise, will depend on how Oda chooses to resolve his story. Whether it's with Tashigi, Hiyori, or no one at all, Zoro's journey is rooted in his unwavering dedication to his dream, making any relationship a secondary focus to his goal of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Chopper, the lovable reindeer doctor of the Straw Hat crew, has a surprisingly adorable potential love interest in Milky, the mink nurse introduced during the zoo arc. While Chopper often comes across as shy and childlike in social situations, his interactions with Milky revealed a side of him that fans rarely get to see. He was visibly flustered and smitten. Milky, a mink who shares Chopper's medical background as a nurse, showed an interest in him during their brief time together. Her kind and cheerful demeanor seemed to charm Chopper, who couldn't help but respond with hearts in his eyes. Their interactions were lighthearted and playful, but they also hinted at the possibility of a deeper connection, especially given their shared profession and mutual admiration. The pairing feels natural for a couple of reasons. First, both characters share a similar sense of compassion and dedication to helping others, which is a core part of their identities. This common ground creates the potential for a strong and meaningful bond. Second, as a mink, Milky's hybrid animal traits make her a more plausible match for Chopper compared to a human character, given the challenges of pairing him romantically with someone outside his species. However, there are also challenges to this pairing. Chopper's portrayal often leans into his innocent, childlike personality, which sometimes makes it hard to picture him in a romantic relationship. Additionally, Oda has not explored Chopper's personal growth in this area as much as he has with other characters, leaving Milky's potential as a love interest somewhat undeveloped. That said, if Oda were to revisit this connection in the future, Milky would be the most logical and heartwarming choice for Chopper. Their chemistry, though subtle, adds a charming layer to Chopper's character, and could serve as a sweet reminder that even the most unlikely characters can find someone who sees and appreciates them for who they truly are. Whether or not this pairing becomes canon, the moments between Chopper and Milky remain a delightful part of the story for fans to enjoy. When it comes to Luffy's romantic future, two characters often stand out as potential love interests: Boa Hancock and Margaret. While Luffy isn't the type of character to actively seek out or show interest in romance, the connections he's formed with these two characters are worth exploring. Boa Hancock. Boa Hancock is by far the most popular and logical choice for Luffy's potential partner. From the moment they met, Hancock has been head over heels in love with Luffy, captivated by his fearless and kind-hearted nature. Luffy, of course being Luffy, remains completely oblivious to her feelings, which only adds to the humor and charm of their dynamic. Hancock's devotion to Luffy is unmatched. She's willing to defy the world government, face enormous dangers, and even risk her position as the ruler of Amazon Lily for him. What makes their potential relationship so compelling is the idea that Hancock's love for Luffy could help soften her tough exterior, while Luffy's straightforward, honest nature could bring a sense of joy and simplicity to her life. If Oda were to make this pairing canon, it could follow a comedic yet heartfelt path, similar to how Goku and Chi-Chi's relationship was portrayed in Dragon Ball. A scenario where Hancock convinces Luffy to marry her by promising a grand banquet could fit perfectly within the world of One Piece. Over time, Luffy could grow to care for Hancock in his own way, leading to a relationship rooted in mutual respect and loyalty. Margaret, while Boa Hancock is the more obvious choice, Margaret, another character from Amazon Lily, offers an interesting alternative. Margaret was the first Amazonian to interact with Luffy, and their initial interactions were filled with kindness and camaraderie. She played a key role in helping Luffy during his time on Amazon Lily, and her straightforward and grounded personality complements Luffy's carefree nature. Unlike Hancock, Margaret doesn't idolize Luffy, but treats him as an equal, which could make for a different kind of relationship. The idea of Luffy ending up with someone like Margaret instead of the larger-than-life Hancock could create an unexpected and humorous twist, especially if Hancock were to react to such a development. What makes sense? Given Luffy's personality, it's important to note that romance is not a priority for him. His focus is on adventure, his friends, and achieving his dream of becoming the Pirate King. However, if Oda decides to explore this side of Luffy's character, Boa Hancock seems like the most fitting choice. Her deep feelings for Luffy and her willingness to change her life for him make her a natural partner. On the other hand, Margaret represents a quieter, more subtle connection that could also work well. Either way, any romantic storyline involving Luffy would likely remain lighthearted and secondary to the overarching plot, staying true to his character and the spirit of the series. Nami's potential romantic future is one of the trickiest to pin down among the Straw Hat crew. Unlike many of her crewmates, Nami has shown no clear romantic interest in anyone throughout the series. Her focus has always been on her goals, navigating the seas, protecting her friends, and achieving her dreams of mapping the world. This lack of romantic development has led fans to speculate and create their own interpretations, with two potential pairings often standing out: Vivi and Tashigi. Vivi-Nami and Vivi's relationship during the Alabasta Saga stands out as one of the strongest bonds Nami has formed with another character outside the Straw Hat crew. The two shared moments of trust, mutual admiration, and genuine care for one another. Vivi's role as a princess and Nami's resourceful, ambitious personality complement each other in a way that suggests they could have a meaningful partnership. If Nami and Vivi were to end up together, it would not only deepen their bond, but also create an intriguing dynamic. As the ruler of Arabasta, Vivi could offer Nami the wealth and security she often dreams about, while Nami could bring her cunning and intelligence to support Vivi in her duties. Imagining Nami as a co-ruler or advisor in Arabasta, living a life of luxury while staying true to her adventurous spirit, feels like a fitting endgame for her character. Tashigi presents another possible pairing, though it's a bit more speculative. The brief interactions between Nami and Tashigi, particularly during the Punk Hazard arc, showcased a surprising level of trust and collaboration. Nami entrusted Tashigi with the safety of the kidnapped children, a decision that highlighted their mutual respect. While this connection isn't heavily developed, it's enough to spark the idea of a deeper relationship. Tashigi's determined and earnest nature could balance out Nami's more mischievous and calculating side, creating a dynamic of opposites attracting. Their shared goal of protecting others and fighting for justice, albeit in different ways, could also serve as common ground for a potential relationship. The case for independence. Ultimately, it's just as likely that Nami won't end up with anyone by the end of the series. Oda has often emphasized that One Piece is an adventure story, not a romance, and Nami's character has always been defined by her independence and drive. Her lack of interest in romantic relationships might reflect her prioritization of her goals and freedom over personal attachments. Still, the idea of Nami finding someone who understands and supports her, whether it's Vivi, Tashigi, or someone else entirely, adds an interesting layer to her character. If Oda were to explore this, it would likely be subtle and secondary to her story as an adventurer and navigator. Regardless of the outcome, Nami's journey is ultimately about her own growth, dreams, and the unbreakable bond she shares with her crew. Jinbei's potential romantic future is perhaps the most ambiguous among the Straw Hat crew. As one of the newest members of the crew and the eldest by far, Jinbei's character has been shaped more by his experiences as a warrior and leader than by any hints of personal relationships. Because of this, there isn't a clear or obvious pairing for Jinbei in the story so far. The lack of romantic development. Unlike many of the other Straw Hats, Jinbei has not been shown to have any romantic or flirtatious interactions with another character. This may be due to his age and maturity, as his story often focuses on themes like honor, duty, and sacrifice. Jinbei's role as a mentor-like figure, particularly to Luffy and the crew, positions him more as a guiding presence than a character whose arc might involve romantic development. Hints of a hidden past. That being said, Jinbei's history is still rich with potential for unexplored relationships. His time as a soldier of the Ryugu Kingdom and later as a captain of the Sun Pirates leaves room for the possibility of a past love or someone he deeply cared about. If Oda were to introduce a romantic element to Jinbei's story, it might come in the form of a long-lost connection or a character from his past who shares his values and experiences. For instance, his relationship with Queen Otohime was one of deep admiration, though it was strictly platonic. It's not hard to imagine that someone with a similar compassion and vision for peace might have captured Jinbei's heart in the past, or could in the future. The role of friendship. If romance isn't part of Jinbei's character arc, it doesn't diminish his ability to form meaningful connections. His bond with the Straw Hats, especially Luffy, is built on mutual respect and trust. Jinbei's focus on duty and loyalty might indicate that his love is directed toward the people and causes he protects, rather than a specific romantic partner. Speculation among fans. While Jinbei hasn't shown any romantic inclinations, some fans have speculated about potential pairings based on his interactions with other characters. For example, his teamwork with Robin during the Onigashima raid sparked lighthearted discussions about the possibility of a connection. However, this is more of a playful idea among fans rather than a serious consideration, especially given Robin's stronger association with Frankie. Conclusion: Jinbei's story isn't necessarily one that needs a romantic element. His character represents wisdom, resilience, and unwavering loyalty, qualities that resonate regardless of whether or not he ends up with a partner. If Oda decides to delve into this side of Jinbei, it would likely be tied to his past, or serve as a reflection of his values rather than a traditional love story. For now, Jinbei's legacy is defined by his role as a protector, a warrior, and an invaluable member of the Straw Hat crew. Today's video, I'm gonna tell you about all the scars Luffy has, but that we don't see in his design. 1. The iconic under-eye scar, the OG mark of a pirate. This is the scar, the one that started it all. When Luffy was just a kid, he took a knife and stabbed himself right under his left eye. Why? Because he wanted to prove his bravery in front of Shanks and his pirate crew. Imagine being so dead set on becoming a pirate that you willingly slice your own face open. Absolute madman. This scar isn't just a random injury, it symbolizes the very beginning of Luffy's journey. It's the mark of his determination, his dream of becoming the king of the pirates. It's a permanent reminder that Luffy was never just a kid dreaming about adventure. He was always ready to bleed for it. You gotta respect the commitment. 2. The giant X on his chest, a symbol of pain and loss. Alright, if the eye scar is about the beginning, this one's about tragedy. The massive X across Luffy's chest is impossible to miss, and for good reason. It was burned into him during the Marineford War, right after the most heartbreaking moment of his life, Ace's death. Akainu, the magma-wielding absolute menace of a Marine Admiral, had just finished off Ace, but he wasn't done. He threw another attack, and while Jinbei tried to shield Luffy, Akainu's fiery fist still made it through, searing into Luffy's chest. Not only was this a brutal wound, but it was a permanent reminder of his brother's death. Every time he looks down, he sees that X, a constant memory of the moment he lost one of the people he loved most. It's not just a scar, it's trauma inked into his skin. 3. The Captain Kuro / marks. Speed over power. Going way back to the Syrup Village arc, Luffy took some serious hits from Captain Kuro. Now, Kuro wasn't your typical brute force villain. His thing was insane speed. He'd zip around so fast that even his own crew got caught in the crossfire of his attacks. During their battle, Kuro landed multiple quick, slicing blows on Luffy. These left him with cuts on his left arm, his right forearm, and even his chest. The dude basically turned Luffy into a scratching post. The wounds weren't as deep as some of his later injuries, but they still left their mark. It's a reminder that not every enemy relies on brute strength, some are just too damn fast. 4. Don Krieg's spiked barrage. Piercing pain. Don Krieg might not be the strongest villain Luffy ever fought, but the dude was a walking arsenal. His armor was basically a medieval torture device, covered in spikes and weapons. During their fight at Baratie, Krieg shot out razor-sharp projectiles, which pierced Luffy's left shoulder and right side of his abdomen. On top of that, Luffy got cuts on his right fist from punching Krieg's spiked armor, because, you know, why not punch a literal wall of spikes? These wounds weren't pretty, but they didn't stop him. If anything, they just proved that Luffy wasn't going to let a few holes in his body slow him down. 5. Arlong's brutal bite marks, a fishman's fangs. Now, we all know Arlong was built different. His shark-like strength was on another level, and his teeth, straight up weapons. During their battle in Arlong Park, Luffy got chomped hard. Arlong bit into his right arm, his ribs, and even his left side near the neck. This guy wasn't playing around. He was trying to rip Luffy apart like a snack. These wounds didn't just hurt like hell. They also represented the intensity of that fight. This was a battle for Nami's freedom, and Luffy took those hits to make sure she never had to suffer under Arlong again. The fact that we don't see these bite scars on him today, kind of a shame. They would have been a badass reminder of the time he literally fought a shark man to free his crew. 6. The crocodile hook wound, a straight up gaping hole. Alright, this one is brutal. In Alabasta, Luffy had his first real encounter with a warlord of the sea, Crocodile. And let me tell you, Crocodile was not messing around. During their first fight, this Sandman literally impaled Luffy with his massive golden hook, lifting him up like a damn kebab. This wasn't some shallow cut. This was a deep, piercing wound right in Luffy's chest. If it weren't for Robin saving him back then, that might have been the end of his adventure. The craziest part, even though this injury was insane, it got overshadowed by the massive X scar he later got from Akainu. Still, make no mistake, Crocodile gave Luffy one of the worst wounds of his life, and it's wild that Oda never made this one visible in the long run. 7. Enel's Trident Stab. A literal god tried to skewer him. Skypiea was all kinds of crazy, but one of the most underrated moments was when Luffy faced off against actual lightning god Enel. Now, Enel's lightning powers were useless against Luffy, because rubber beats electricity, duh, so the guy had to get creative. At one point, he straight up stabbed Luffy in the ribs with his giant golden trident. This wasn't just some casual poke, it was meant to end him, and yet Luffy being Luffy, he just tanked it like it was nothing. Even though Enel kept trying to skewer him with that thing, Luffy dodged most of the follow-ups and managed to send that smug god packing. It's one of those scars we never see, but man, it had to leave a mark. 8. Rob Lucci's finger gun. A kill shot that didn't kill. If you know One Piece, you know that Luffy versus Rob Lucci was the fight of Enies Lobby, and if you know Lucci, you know he fights with a technique called Shigen, which is basically stabbing people with his freaking fingers. During their battle, Lucci used Shigen and literally punched a hole in Luffy's chest. Think about that. A man poked a hole through him like his finger was a bullet. Later on, in their rematch during Egghead Island, Lucci used this move again, but the first one was the real nightmare. Oh, and just for fun, Lucci also bit him on the shoulder in that fight, because apparently nearly killing someone with your fingers isn't enough. 9th Hody Jones's Deja Vu Bite. Another fishman, another Chomp Luffy, has a weird history of getting bitten by fishmen. First it was Arlong, and years later, on Fishman Island, Hody Jones decided to do the same thing. During their fight, Hody bit Luffy on the exact same spot where Arlong had bitten him years before, on the left side of his neck. It's like these guys had some kind of fishman club rule. If you fight Luffy, you gotta bite him in the neck. The difference? By this point, Luffy was way stronger and didn't let it slow him down. It was a cool parallel to the Arlong fight, but let's be real. This dude Hody was just Arlong 2.0, but worse. 10th Doflamingo's Threaded Nightmare. Stitches for days. Now we get to Dressrosa, aka the Luffy gets turned into a pincushion arc. Because if you're fighting Don Quixote Doflamingo, you know you're gonna get sliced. Doflamingo's Devil Fruit ability let him create razor-sharp strings, and when he awakened his powers, he turned the entire battlefield into a death trap. During the fight, he stabbed Luffy right in the stomach with one of his strings. On top of that, when Luffy went in for the final punch, Doffy's string shredded his knuckles, cutting his hands open. Even though Luffy came out on top, this fight was pure carnage. And let's be real, Doflamingo not leaving a scar would have been surprising. The guy is literally a walking razor blade. 11th, Cracker's Sword Slash, a tough cut to the arm. Luffy's battle against Charlotte Cracker in Whole Cake Island was one of endurance. Cracker's biscuit soldiers were an absolute nightmare, and this dude wasn't just hiding behind them, he was deadly in his own right. During the fight, Cracker managed to slash Luffy's right arm with his sword, even though Luffy had his haki activated for protection. That's right, this attack actually cut through Luffy's defenses. While it wasn't a deep wound, it was enough to leave a scar as a reminder of how crazy tough Cracker's biscuits were. I mean, the guy made Luffy eat dozens of them just to win. That alone is a battle scar for his stomach. 12th, Katakuri's Lethal Spear, a duel of giants. Luffy versus Katakuri, one of the best fights in One Piece, hands down. This battle was all about raw power, advanced haki, and two absolute monsters trying to outlast each other. At one point, Katakuri stabbed Luffy in the left side of his abdomen with his trident, Magura. The crazy part, Luffy could have dodged it, but he got distracted because of Flampe's interference. This dirty move allowed Katakuri to land a direct hit, piercing Luffy and leaving a wound that realistically should have been fatal. But here's where things get bad badass. When Katakuri found out that Flampe had interfered, he stabbed himself in the same spot to level the playing field. I mean, what a legend. This wasn't just an injury, it was a moment of absolute respect between warriors. 13. The scar that's not on Luffy, Buggy's hat slash. Okay, this one is a bit different, but it's too iconic not to mention. Back in Orange Town, Luffy was up against Buggy the Clown, and while Buggy himself didn't leave a mark on Luffy's body, he did leave one on something just as important, Luffy's straw hat. During the fight, Buggy sliced into Luffy's most prized possession, the straw hat that Shanks gave him. This left a permanent mark on the hat, which Nami later stitched up. Even though this isn't a scar on Luffy's skin, it's arguably just as meaningful. That hat is everything to him, and the fact that it carries battle damage makes it even more legendary. And that's a wrap. All of Luffy's scars explained in detail with every story behind them. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.